Callum and Rayla, the most popular relationship from the Dragon Prince series. Now that the Dragon Prince is possibly over, I thought it would be fun to go over their entire relationship from start to finish, talking about the goods, the bads, the development, and why Rayla was such a complex and realistic ship. This video will cover the 7 seasons, graphic novels, short stories, and any other information that may be relevant from other source material, like the season novels. So, without further ado, let's begin this monstrosity. My voice is going to be dead after this. The story of Callum and Rayla, or Raylum for short, started the night they first met for the first time. When they met, they were young and they were enemies. Callum was 14 and 5/6, and Rayla was 15. Rayla was at the castle of Catalis to attempt to complete a mission with 5 other skilled Moonshadow assassins, Callisto, Ram, Andromeda, Score, and her parental figure, Runan, to kill Callum's stepfather, King Harrow, and Callum's little brother, Prince Ezrin. Rayla ended up finding Callum first, and even though Callum wasn't her target, Callum was still terrified to face the elves of his nightmares face to face. His first ever line to her was a stammery, panicky line, something Rayla made fun of quickly.
You're one of those with the pointy...
Oh, you don't like my ears.
Callum escaped her and fled to the High Mage's office, but Rayla caught up to him and held her blades, asking for information. When she mentioned the name of his little brother, Ezrin, Callum immediately began to try to reason with her, something which shocked the elf, as his points about justice and the cycle of violence were absolutely true and they resonated with her. But, despite his efforts, justice would not be denied. Realizing she wouldn't back down, Callum bravely proclaimed that he was Prince Ezrin to save his life.
I am Prince Ezrin.
Rayla then prepared to kill him, apologizing but also not backing down, until they both heard a voice from behind the painting, which turned out to be the actual Ezrin, who helped Callum escape with the help of bait. When Rayla finally caught up to them, she saw the horror around her that was Viren's study. This was enough for her to be certain that there was no reason to spare their lives, until Ezrin revealed Zim's egg.
This changes everything.
Once they realized what they had discovered, Rayla's allegiance shifted completely. She remembered Callum's words about the cycle of violence. If they could return Zim to his mother, Zubeia, they could possibly stop the war between elves and humans. However, they were then interrupted by Claudia, Callum's current crush at the time, and a dark mage, who argued with Rayla until Ezrin and Rayla began to run off, deciding that they needed to return the egg. Callum stayed behind with Claudia for a moment, but in that moment, he chose to go with his brother and Rayla, turning on Claudia and stealing her Sky Primal Stone before she could cast Fulminous at Rayla. In that moment, Callum chose the mission, and he chose Rayla.
Callum, what are you doing?
The right thing, I hope. I'm sorry, Claudia.
After he cast Aspro for the first time, Rayla called him a mage, and at first, he didn't believe it, but Rayla insisted that...
You're a mage.
Oh, really? Wow, I'm a mage. I'm a mage!
Shh. Nobody likes a loud mage.
Sorry.
This is the first time they've had the chance to just casually talk to each other, and we can't ignore that Rayla touched his lips within the first hour of meeting him. Minutes later, as they were traveling through the tunnels, Rayla insisted that she take the egg to the battlements to let Runan, their leader, see it, so he could call off the mission. However, Callum was still not too trusting of this new elf.
Right, that makes sense, since we go way back. Like that one time, 10 minutes ago, when you chased me through the castle trying to stab me? Haha, good times.
At this point, they knew each other's names, and the novelized version actually has them introduce each other. Ezrin agrees to take Rayla to the roof, and while there, they encounter Runan. Callum defends Rayla right in front of him, despite the danger. Runan is not as easily convinced as Rayla is, however, due to the moon bindings on each of their arms that would tighten indefinitely unless the mission was complete. In that moment, Rayla also chose the mission, as she tells Callum and Ezrin to run, and to keep the eggs safe. The next time Callum and Rayla could see each other is in the courtyard after Harrow's murder.
Say the word and I'll go back into that tower with you.
This moment shows an insane level of devotion to her new cause and to her new friends. Callum knows, however, that they have to go, though, and urges them to depart from Catalis to embark on a mission across the world to return Zim to Zubeia to stop the war. As they escape, Rayla sees a blood ribbon bird fly above, and as this happens, one of the bindings falls off her wrists. When Callum asks what happened, Rayla knew she couldn't tell him what it meant, for it would instantly ruin their new alliance if she told the truth, that Hera was dead. This secret would be kept for a long, long time. The next morning, Callum and Rayla finally have a chance to just simply interact, which gives us the first few inklings that something between them was possible. Rayla teases Callum about what his actual name was, and helps him understand the basics of magic. Callum lets her borrow his sketchbook and pencil, and this moment in the novel is actually quite interesting as we learn that Callum was actually drawing Rayla just before this. While explaining magic to Callum, Rayla gives him certain looks, which to me, on my first watch 6 years ago, made me think that something between them was possible, even if the writers themselves didn't know it yet. Callum recognizes the symbols Rayla drew, noting that it looked like a cube in the Banter Lodge, and he insists that they go and get it. Rayla was reluctant, but Callum gave her a little heartfelt speech about how he finally had something he might be good at, and that the cube could help him. This shows that even after just meeting her, Callum was okay with opening up to her a little bit about his own insecurities and self-doubts. He looks away from her as he speaks, perhaps expecting to be shut down by the elf, but after a quick interruption from Ezrin, Rayla actually listens and agrees to go.
Hey, sad prince. Let's go get your cube.
Really?
Yes. Just please. No more detours, all right? Or heartfelt speeches.
As they travel, Rayla offers some moonberry juice, but Callum, having been educated about how elves are bloodthirsty monsters, assumed it was just a bottle of blood. Rayla understandably becomes irritated at the assumption, but their arrival at the Banter Lodge distracts both of them. This interaction shows that they still have a lot to learn about each other, but not only each other, their lifestyles and cultures as well. When they arrive at the lodge, Callum draws out the room where the cube is located, and once Rayla gets a good look at it, she realizes just how good of an artist Callum was. However, Rayla ends up getting captured by Aunt Amaya, and together, the two brothers hatch a plan to free Rayla. When they all escape, they become surrounded by the guards, and Callum signs to Amaya.
He says, if we don't let you go, you'll kill them and drink their blood, that you are a monster.
While this was just a trick to Callum and something he didn't actually believe, Rayla took his words seriously and felt hurt. When she confronted him about his words on the boat, Callum told her softly that he didn't actually believe any of those things he had told their aunt, and that he was just trying to scare her.
That went well. They tried to kill me.
She then gave him the cube, for which Callum was very grateful for. The early days of their relationship were full of moments like this, misunderstandings and misinterpretations, but each time, they learned something from it. At this point, they were still just becoming friends, learning how to trust one another and rely on each other. But despite this, Rayla still keeps the burden of her secret wrapped around her wrist, growing ever tighter and tighter. As their journey progresses, Callum is eager to try out the primal stone he stole from Claudia, and he does so while Rayla is out on patrol. But in the process of trying to cast the lightning spell, he realizes he doesn't remember the draconic word fulminous. He cries for help, and Rayla instantly leaps into action, arriving with weapons drawn to protect her new friends. But when it's revealed what was actually wrong, after giving him a well-deserved lecture, she actually tries to help and remember the draconic word. After the issue is resolved, we get to a scene where Rayla's fear of water starts to become apparent. At the time, Callum and Ezrin tease her about it.
Are you like this back-flipping, tree-climbing, sword-stabbing elven warrior, but scared of a little splish-splashing?
And not wanting to appear weak to them, Rayla reluctantly gets on the boat with them. The next scene they share, though, is one of the first hints at how their bond would progress. Known to many as the 5 questions scene, Callum notices Rayla's obvious discomfort with the water, and to distract her, he begins asking her 5 questions. He asks her what Zadia is like. The idea that everything in the land is magical is quite the incredible and novel concept to him, because the human kingdoms were all barren of magic due to the Mage Wars. As they talk, they get closer, both physically and emotionally, as they both talk casually with mutual smiles and interests. Rayla urges Callum to continue asking more questions, which he does, but he reaches a sore topic when he asks what her parents were like. When Rayla says they were dead, which was of course a lie, Callum offers his condolences. However, the conversation is quickly ended by an oncoming waterfall. In this moment, Rayla admits that she was in fact afraid of water, but it was too late. They went down the waterfall, lost bait, encountered a sea leviathan, and here we see Rayla trusting Callum's magic despite the earlier incident with the Primal Stone, as he shocks the water to slay the beast and save Rayla and Bait. When they recover, Callum tells Rayla that it was brave trying to save Bait despite her fear of the water. She is unconvinced, but Callum insists on her bravery. After being questioned about keeping her fear of water a secret, Rayla tells both of them how Moonshadow assassins are not supposed to show fear.
I was afraid of being afraid.
Well, that's kind of circular. But hey, worth noting, you're not afraid of being afraid.
That's deep. But stupid.
In that moment, Rayla also tells the truth about her parents, and after hearing her out, Callum places a soft, gentle hand on her shoulder, a gesture that made her breath hitch a little bit, as she likely wasn't expecting such a meaningful gesture from a human. After all of this, Callum pushes their boat out of reach, something Rayla greatly appreciates. But even still, with all of the truth coming out, the truth around her wrist still tore at her, and she knew she still couldn't tell them, even when questioned about it, saying it was just decorative. The next morning, Rayla encounters Corvus, an encounter which shakes her both physically and emotionally, as her hand is still in rough shape from the ever-tightening binding. And Corvus tells her that when the princes find out about Harrow, they would hate her for it. Back at their camp, Callum tells Ezrin that he is certain that Rayla isn't telling them everything. As if on cue, after the hard-fought battle, Rayla returns to Callum and Ezrin, rushing them awake and offering no explanation for the urgency. They begin a treacherous journey through the mountains, with Rayla wanting to avoid common roads due to her encounter with Corvus. Frustrated, Callum begins questioning her, and Rayla still offers no explanation, something which irritates Callum even more until they begin arguing loudly, their voices echoing through the mountains and cracking the ice above them. Their heated yelling match revolves around the topic of trust. Callum doesn't trust Rayla enough to help them carry the egg, thinking she would betray them, but Rayla insists that the gesture would be meaningless if the egg came from her, an elf. It had to come from humans. Ezrin then warns both of them about the cracking ice, but it's too late, especially after Bait does Bait things. As they run from the ensuing avalanche, Callum tells both of them to get behind him, as he pulls out his Primal Stone. Both Rayla and Ezrin immediately listen, standing behind the mage as he casts Aspero, temporarily keeping them safe, but once he runs out of breath, they get caught. Thankfully, miraculously, they survive. But now they find themselves on a frozen lake with thin ice. As Ezrin grabs the egg which had rolled out of reach, the ice below him begins to crack. Callum grabs the egg from him, but encounters a similar issue.
What now?
Now, I'm gonna hand you the egg.
Callum apologizes for not trusting Rayla before, her words earlier about the gesture getting through to him. But Rayla, in that moment, hesitates, knowing she couldn't betray their trust again. She began telling them about Corvus, and how the fight was hard due to her assassin's binding. While she doesn't tell them about Harrow's death, she does tell them that the binding won't come off unless she ends Ezrin's life, and that she will lose her hand if she doesn't complete her mission. While Callum greatly appreciates her honesty, the cracks below him get wider and wider, and he hands her the egg, but Rayla wasn't ready for its weight, and her bad hand gave out, causing the egg to fall into the icy water. Ezrin then immediately dives after it. Callum tries to follow, but Rayla holds him back, pulling him on top of her and holding him by the chest, telling him that Ezrin would get it, showing just how much she believes in Ezrin and urging Callum to do the same. But as time goes on, they realize that she might have been wrong, that Ezrin might not get out. As the realization hits both of them, Rayla immediately apologizes as Callum begins to go into shock, but she quickly realizes that the binding around her wrist was still tight, meaning Ezrin was still alive. Together, they find him and pull him out, hugging the frozen boy as he wakes up. However, Zim's egg wasn't doing so well from the trip underwater, so they knew they had to get some help. They spent the night in the cave, with Callum urging his little brother to get closer to the fire to fight off the cold chills. Rayla then returned and saw Callum drawing Sarai, and she asked if it was his mother. The next morning, they arrived at a human town. The bond between Callum and Rayla had grown tremendously after she revealed most of her secrets to him, and the next scene proves this as they think of ways to disguise Rayla in the human town. As she dons her human Rayla disguise, she begins playfully mocking humans right in front of Callum, even going out of her way to wrap an arm around his shoulder quickly. As they enter the town, they come across a massive gathering, and Rayla eagerly tells Callum about the Sunforged blade that Tristan was holding. The novel describes Rayla's explanation as a little blip of excitement. Clearly, she felt comfortable sharing some elven magic with Callum and Ezrin. Once they reconvene, though, it is revealed that Rayla was unable to use the Sunforged blade to cut the magical binding off her wrist, something which Callum was genuinely sympathetic for. She then asks if anything good happened with the egg.
Yes and no. Well, no. Not yet, but maybe. So, yes, in a way?
Okay, that's averaging out to be around a maybe minus.
Yeah, that's about right.
They tell her about a miracle healer that they heard about, with the caveat being that the miracle healer was atop the cursed caldera. While climbing, they encounter Ava and Ellis. Callum introduces Ellis to Rayla in quite an interesting way.
Oh, I should have introduced you guys. Ellis, this is Rayla, who we originally met because, well, she broke into our castle, trying to kill Ezrin.
But it doesn't matter. We're past that now.
I like this scene a lot, because even though it's meant to be a joke, it shows that Callum no longer really holds a grudge towards Rayla for how they met. He understands that there was a lot more to Rayla than just a Moonshadow assassin. She wasn't the bloodthirsty elf of his nightmares. Maybe of his dreams? Okay, that joke sucked. As the sun began to set, Callum proposed a plan to use against any creepy crawlies they encountered at night. As Callum explains his plan, Rayla teases him about her slish-and-slash hands, which is not only just really adorable from Rayla, but it also shows just how comfortable she had become with Callum in particular. And this is expressed even more in the very next scene when she remembers the draconic word for lightning.
Wait, Callum, you may be a dummy, but you're not a fool.
Am I supposed to feel flattered by this?
Already in just the first season, you can see how far they've come. Callum is beginning to understand Rayla's internal struggles and self-doubts now too, as he gives her the encouragement she needs to deliver the final killing blow to a giant leech that attacked them. Throughout the battle, Callum also showcases trust in Rayla once more, as he uses the word fulminous to attack the leech, the draconic word that she told him. From this point on until the rest of the season, though, not much else happens between them specifically. And by not much else, I mean one of the most important and underrated Rayla moments in the entire season happens.
Did you find someone?
No, there was no one there. We have to get moving.
Are you okay? You saw something.
It was barely alive. Crumbled to dust right before my eyes. It was horrible, Callum.
The novelized version of the scene is as follows. "Are you okay?" he asked Rayla. The image of the sack flashed in her mind again, and for some reason, she found that she wanted to share what she had seen with Callum, even if she didn't tell anyone else. And once Callum hears what it was, he thinks to himself that he was glad she told the truth. Like, hello? The amount of trust this scene showcases is crazy. Out of anyone there, and despite her earlier telling him that Moonshadow assassins were not supposed to show fear, she tells Callum, and Callum only, exactly what happened. It's hard to say when and where Rayla's feelings for Callum began to develop, besides the ruthless lightning ship scene in Season 2, which is where the storyboard first showed attraction, but if you ask me, this realization that she could tell Callum what she saw may very well be the beginning of her feelings, or maybe not. It's all very subjective and up for interpretation. What do you guys think? Let me know down below in the comments. Season 2 is where things begin to change, and change quickly. Raylan as a relationship was the exact opposite of a slow burn in the first arc. The season starts off with Callum writing a letter to Harrow, still sadly unaware that he had been supposedly killed. He tells his stepfather about the mission they were embarking on, and as he's reading his letter out loud, he begins reading the section he wrote about Rayla in particular, calling her kind and good. A stark contrast to how he originally thought of elves.
She's fearless, fast, strong.
And daring. Oh, so daring.
Hey, have you just been standing there the whole time?
Rayla then realizes he's writing a letter to Harrow. Even though the binding on her wrist is gone, courtesy of the now hatched Zim, the secret still weighs heavy on her face and her tone. Callum remains oblivious to her obvious discomfort, at least for now, but for Rayla, the issue is constantly eating away at her. She wants so badly to tell Callum, but how could she possibly do it? She's waited long enough already. Saying it now might ruin their bond, despite it being the right thing to do. She's never dealt with something like this before. To distract herself and to defend the boys from the threat of the dark forces pursuing them, which is Claudia and Soren, she does several perimeter checks and patrols constantly, giving us a silly moment where a sad Callum walks by her and she strikes a ninja pose because she's a silly goose. Anyways, when Claudia and Soren finally arrive, a battle between Rayla and the two siblings ensues, but before it can get worse, Callum arrives and puts himself between them. Something to note is that he's facing Claudia and Soren, and he keeps his back to Rayla, which shows that even though she was trying to attack his friends, he trusts her enough to not be afraid of her. He breaks up the fight and assists Rayla out of the mud by taking her hands in his. A small moment, but it still goes to show that Callum views everyone in his current company as friends, and he wants to make sure that they are all okay. As they walk onward, Callum and Claudia take the lead. Keep in mind that at this point, Callum's love interest is still currently Claudia, and she knows it. When she ruffles her hand through his messy hair, both Rayla and Soren groan in disgust. But from Rayla's side, it could also be jealousy too. There is an excerpt from the novelization of Season 2 of this moment, immediately after she played with his hair, that reads as follows. Callum's brain froze and his face got hot. He hoped Rayla hadn't noticed Claudia stroking his head. I don't like that wording. He glanced over his shoulder. Rayla was staring at him. Well, glaring was more like it. There are many ways this could be interpreted. Maybe Rayla was simply pissed that Callum was being so chummy with someone who just tried to kill her. Maybe she was making sure that Claudia wouldn't attack him, though I feel as though she should have been glaring at Claudia rather than Callum if that were the case, to make sure she didn't make any sudden moves. But I'm still going to be delusional and say it was out of jealousy, because yes. Again, what do you think? The next morning, Claudia serves them all pancakes, and during this meal, Soren says that the boys needed to come home because King Harrow missed them. And of course, Rayla knew that Harrow was dead. The first chance she gets, she goes to Callum alone and tells him that they can't trust him.
We can't trust them.
Look, I get it. You don't like Claudia. She tried to kill you multiple times. But remember, until today, she thought you were trying to hurt me and Ezrin.
Rayla tells him that she knows they're lying, and in this moment, Rayla seemed to be on the verge of actually telling the secret about Harrow. But unfortunately, they were interrupted by Claudia, ending the conversation. Also, this shot just looks hilarious. Rayla hates Claudia's guts. As Callum and Claudia go off on a walk together, Claudia asks if she interrupted something with Callum and Rayla. In both the show and the novel, Callum is very quick to tell her that they didn't have anything romantic going on. The novel even emphasizes that if Claudia got the wrong idea about himself and Rayla, that it could risk his chances with Claudia. This shows that Callum was still very much smitten by the Dark Mage rather than the Elf, who he still viewed as just a friend, for now. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Rayla is spying on Soren, who is watching over Ezrin. Rayla's suspicions and instincts were correct on Soren and Claudia's intentions, but Callum needed proof from her. After witnessing Soren nearly have Ezrin killed on a zip line the Crown Guard made, Rayla went back to Callum, who is drawing the Moon Nexus. Despite her best efforts though, Callum still wasn't convinced, and for good reason. One of the reasons I really like this scene is because they both have solid stances on their sides of the conflict. Callum has known Soren and Claudia since he was a kid. They grew up together. Why would they be trying to hurt him? Especially Claudia. But Rayla, at the same time, is actually correct about their intentions. Rayla begs him to look her in the eyes and trust her, which Callum does.
I can see you believe it. But I've known Soren and Claudia for years. You and I don't have that yet.
At this point, Rayla finally decides to try and get some help, albeit from Lujane of all people. The conversation she has with her does help her realize that she has to tell Callum the truth, and so she sets out in search of her human friend to tell him about Harrow. But unfortunately, Claudia got to Callum first, taking him out on a date and nearly kissing him. I do want to add a passage from the novel here really quick about said near kiss. It's not related to Raylan at all, but rather Claudia. Despite the show making it seem like Claudia's entire date with Callum was a trick to gain his trust, the novel reads differently, and shows us a side of Claudia's character that I find quite interesting. Claudia could feel Callum's warm breath on her face, and she breathed in deeply. She wanted to kiss him like she had never wanted anything before. But, as much as she wanted to, Claudia couldn't kiss him. It felt too much like a betrayal. It turns out, Claudia did have genuine feelings for Callum too. Who knew? Anyway, back to the actual future couple. When Rayla found Callum, she told him that they needed to talk. She needed to tell him about Harrow, but she was too late. He had found out from Claudia instead. Rayla tried to defend herself and genuinely apologize, feeling terrible. But Callum didn't want to hear it. All he could think about now was how he would be able to tell Ezran the news that their father was gone. And here comes one of my favorite Rayla moments in the entire show. As Callum enters the room preparing to tell Ezran, he finds himself in the exact same position as Rayla. He couldn't tell Ezran, and because of that, he understands why Rayla couldn't tell him.
I understand why you couldn't tell me. When you care about someone, it's hard to hurt them, even when what you're telling them is the truth.
I still should have told you. You had the right to know.
This line affirms that Rayla cares for Callum a lot, even if it's just friendship at that point in time. Callum lets himself cry in front of Rayla, and she immediately holds him close and pulls him in for a hug. This moment builds not only an insane amount of trust between them, but it also creates an immense amount of understanding between them. Trust and understanding are massive components to any healthy, long-standing relationship, especially Rayla. And now, both of them share the burden of keeping the secret, this time from Ezran. They're now sharing in each other's burden, something that will be brought up again in Season 5. Moving on, as the next day arrives, Rayla insists that they finally have to go. They have to continue on their mission. They have to get Zim to Zadia. But there's still the issue of Claudia and Soren, who are not going to leave so easily. And while Callum recognizes that Soren had lied to them, Claudia did actually tell him the truth about Harrow. Overhearing this conversation, Claudia and Soren appear. Callum tells them that they're leaving, but before they leave, Claudia asks Callum if they could talk in private. When he sees Rayla again, Callum reveals that Soren and Claudia want to accompany them. Rayla, of course, is very much not okay with this. She doesn't trust them. Despite everything Claudia was doing for Callum, she could tell something was still wrong about the Dark Mage, and something was definitely off about Soren. Rayla implores Callum's trust, insisting that they will lose everything. Callum eventually asks her how they could figure it out. How could they figure out if they could trust them? With the help of Lujane's illusion magic, they reveal that Claudia and Soren did in fact have an ulterior motive the entire time. Fortunately, with the help of Fifi, they managed to just barely escape Claudia's magic. While Rayla was originally ecstatic that she was right about them, she quickly realized that Callum wouldn't feel as triumphant as her, as those people were supposed to be his friends. He felt betrayed, but not only betrayed, he felt heartbroken about Claudia. Rayla's mood immediately shifted to one of empathy, placing a hand on his shoulder.
We got him! I was right!
Yeah, you were right.
I wish I wasn't. I'm sorry.
And the novel adds that Callum had thanked Rayla for saying that. The next morning, Callum and Rayla share a goofy moment where he is meditating on the meaning of sky. The novel actually reads that this was a lie by Callum, and what he was really doing was trying his best to distract himself from being heartbroken by Claudia, someone he thought he loved. Rayla sarcastically calls his meditation boring, but moments later, Fifi falls from the sky due to exhaustion and distance from the moon nexus. When they land, they find themselves on the edge of a cliff overlooking the sea. Rayla expresses her distaste of water, and Callum, ever the empathetic, dorky human, tells her that they would just walk around it with their legs.
No, that's sweet, but walking around is going to take too long.
As they get into town, Rayla disguises herself as a human again, garnering a similar response from Callum as when she did it the first time. Once they find the captain, Rayla comes back and eagerly grabs Rayla by the hand to rush her to her feet. A small blink and you'll miss it moment that's kind of cute. Once they board the ship and interact with Villas, they're on their way. The D is silent, by the way. But a storm catches them, and they have to dock at a small island. As I mentioned before, There was a moment during the storyboarding process where the creators of the show actually got the idea for Raylan as a couple, and that moment happens right here.
Hey, are you coming or what?
Yeah, I agree.
I know that face. It's the dumb idea face.
As they talk about Callum doing magic, Rayla playfully jokes with him, and he finds amusement in her words. And then, as he walks out into the storm with Zim, Rayla showcases an immense amount of concern towards his safety, looking at him walk away almost longingly.
If you die out there, I swear I'll kill you.
And as he comes back, unsuccessful in his goal to connect to the Sky Arcanum through the storm, he admits to Rayla that he felt stupid.
I could have gotten Zim killed. I put us both in danger. And worst of all, when we were right there in the center of the storm, I thought I wanted this badly enough, but in the end, I didn't have the guts.
Good.
Finally, a good, proper hug between the two of them, where both of them are actually happy. The joy on Callum's face is very apparent and super heartwarming to watch, even 6 years later. I just love these two. The next time we see a Raylan moment is actually only in the Book 2 novelization, as there is a moment here which never happens in the show. Good luck to you, kids, Villas said. And Callum, one last piece of advice. Always remember the wisdom of the wind. You cannot see it or hold it. You just got to feel it. He then sucked in some sea air and exhaled directly into Callum's face. Callum scrunched up his nose in disgust. Ugh, why do people always feel the need to blow on me when they're making a point? Oh, don't take everything so personally, Rayla said. Come on, we've got to find a place to stay before it gets dark out. Lead the way, Callum said. I think there might be caves up in those mountains behind you, Rayla said. This way? Callum asked. He pointed over his right shoulder. No, that way, Rayla said. As Callum turned to look, Rayla blew on the left side of his face. It's a small moment, but it does indeed show how Callum and Rayla are becoming more comfortable around each other, especially Rayla's comfort towards Callum. By this point, I am pretty sure it can be fully assumed that Rayla had a crush on Callum. Callum's feelings do still have a little bit of time to develop for her, though, as he is still getting over the betrayal of Claudia. But it won't be long before the feelings are reciprocated. Once they are in the cave, we come back to the show to see Callum trying to figure out what the cube does. Rayla joins him, teasing him about playing a game of roly cubes with bait, and losing. But then actually taking him seriously when he begins to describe his thought process to her. He then asks her about her connection to the Moon Arcanum.
I don't really think about it. I just stand in the light of the full moon, and then there's a feeling like, shwa-wa-wa-wa. And then there's a sort of ting, and then psha! Moon shadow powers! Does that help?
No, not at all. But I enjoyed it.
Callum then talks about how he needs to become a mage again. They saw a dragon in the clouds before reaching the shore aboard Villas' ship.
Crossing the border? That's gonna be crazy dangerous.
Well, maybe not.
There's a river of lava. One does not simply walk into Zadia.
Actually, one does simply walk into Zadia. It'll be safe and easy, even for you, magic or no magic. Come get some rest.
You're right. Let's go back to sleep.
As they return from Pyra, the Red Dragon's crash site, Rayla tells Callum that she should have done something to save the dragon. Callum reminds her that she's the one telling them that Zim getting to Zadia was their top priority. Rayla explains how this was different.
Every fiber in my body is telling me this is wrong. That dragon is defenseless, and I just left her there.
Callum tells her that he doesn't get it.
Why are you so worried about a dragon that just set fire to a town?
I've been thinking about something someone once told me. About how when one person hurts another, then that person hurts them back. It becomes a cycle that never ends.
Who told you that?
You did. Callum, to break that cycle, someone has to take a stand when no one else will.
Callum agrees, but asks how he could possibly help when he couldn't do anything. Rayla grabs onto him and makes him face her.
It's okay, Callum. I'm not asking you to come with me. Protecting that dragon doesn't just feel like the right thing to do, it feels like the right thing for me to do.
She then tells him that she's going back down there.
If I don't come back, you and Ezran can get Zim to Zadia. I believe in you.
Wait, Rayla.
And it is here, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between, where the novel gives a hint. A hint that reveals that it was these words that sparked Callum's feelings towards Rayla. Because immediately after Rayla had told him she believed in him, the novel reads as follows. Callum blushed. No one had ever said those words to him before. Or at least, not that he remembered. Thanks, Ray. But by the time Callum looked up, Rayla was gone. Immediately after this, Callum was back to drawing her again, with the novel describing it as a picture of Rayla, a powerful, heroic figure. The novel also describes Callum's emotions. His palms were sweating, and his chest felt tight. He wondered, what if she didn't come back? It was in this moment of frustration and desperation, and his sketchbook sliding off his lap, turning to a page of Claudia holding her dark spellbook, that Callum decided to do something. Even if that something was horrifying. He had to save Rayla with dark magic. And that's precisely what he did, to the shock and dismay of the Moonshadow Elf. Thankfully, it did work as intended, but in the process, Callum was left in a dark magic coma, a dream of sorts, forcing Rayla to bring him back to the cave and, with the help of Ezran, take care of him. During this time, Rayla chastised his use of dark magic, but it fell on deaf ears as Callum was literally in an entirely different realm. Soon, though, he got worse, calling out for help in his sleep, and Rayla never left his side once, placing cool, damp cloths on his forehead to ease the fever.
You messed with something you shouldn't have messed with, and now you're paying the price.
Help! Help!
You'll get through this. You big dumb human.
Eventually, it got to the point where Callum was gasping for air. Unbeknownst to Rayla, Callum was actively connecting with the Sky Arcanum in his dream, but to her, it seemed like she was about to lose the potential love of her life forever. She held on to him, clinging to him, calling his name, begging for him to be okay again. I should note that during this time, Ezran found out about Harrow from Corvus, who had finally caught up to them, so it was only Callum and Rayla left behind in the cave. Soon enough, Rayla was hugging and holding on to him with all of her might, placing her hand on his cheek, begging him to stay with her.
I can't lose you like this. You mean too much to me.
And then, in a moment of anguish, she nearly admits her love for him.
Callum, I...
And according to the novel, Callum heard it. He even notes that his cheeks felt warm from where her palm had just been.
Oh, look, you're awake now. You're even looking cheery. And is that a twinkle in your eye?
Callum thankfully ends her nervous tirade to tell her that he understood the Sky Arcanum. As he describes it to her, Rayla can barely process everything at that moment, but she still tries her best to listen to her best friend. And then, to her amazement, he casts Aspero without the help of Claudia's Primal Stone. He was a Primal Mage now. After a little bit of time passes in the show, in which Ezran embarks on a journey with Corvus to return to Catalis, leaving just Rayla alone together, we arrive at the Moon Passage. They regret the fact that Ezran isn't with them, but they both agree that they're all doing the right thing for their journey. Once they arrive, they try and figure out how to cross it, but Rayla actually does know.
Not all the rocks sink that quickly. A few will let us stand on them long enough to walk across. Those special stones are called the Moonstone Path.
Okay, great. So, how do we know?
Patience, friend.
Using her knowledge of the pass and Callum's magic, they successfully make it across and hug each other tightly with delight. And that wraps up Season 2. This video is already ridiculously long, but that's okay. This is Raylan we're talking about. They deserve it. From this point on, though, no more references will be made to the novelized versions of the seasons, because they don't exist. Anywho, let's move on to Season 3. The season begins with Callum and Rayla facing off against Sol Regum, trying to sneak past the blind dragon without being eaten to get into Zadia. Right off the bat, we see how goofy both of them have become around each other. That comfort reaching record highs, especially now that it was just the two of them, and Zim. Eventually, Rayla resorts to diplomacy, speaking to the Great Archdragon and requesting safe passage, but unfortunately, Sol Regem hates humans with everything he has. Rayla, however, comes to Callum's aid, vouching for his good character and speaking very highly of him. We can see Callum's face go to a range of emotion: admiration, awe, amazement, appreciation, and maybe even love.
He's smart and kind and brave, and he's my friend. My best friend.
This is the first time they've been hand in hand as far as I remember. Just look how happy Callum was in that moment. Rayla's vouch almost works, but when Sol Regem smells the use of dark magic within Callum, he snaps, declaring that Callum must die. So, they come up with a new plan while waiting for Sol Regem's fire breath to come back. Rayla tells him to give her his scarf, saying that she could smell like him to trick the dragon.
This is the worst idea you've ever had. He's gonna burn you to a crisp.
No, he won't. I'm faster than him.
I haven't bathed in 2 weeks. This should do the trick.
Oh.
Right?
And then we get to this moment.
Here goes nothing.
Gods, that awkwardness between them after an intimate moment. So cliche. But it works, because they are in love. By now, the show is just screaming to us that they both have feelings for one another, but neither of them really know how to act on them. They've never been in a relationship before, as far as I know. After successfully tricking Sol Regem and escaping, Rayla tells Callum that she will continue to wear his stinky, smelly scarf, saying it's good luck. And I mean, come on, this is basically the equivalent of letting your crush borrow your sweater. Now safely in Zadia, Callum is awestruck by everything around him. The magical lands that he and Rayla talked about way back on the boat being proven true. Even the dirt is magic. Rayla watches Callum endearingly as he is amazed by everything. Rayla tells Callum that she's taking him to her home, and that she has a surprise for him if they arrive by dusk. Just look at this face Rayla makes when she finds a Meladaisy. Season 3 is a treasure trove of small Rayla moments, and it's moments like these that are so easily missed by the vast majority of viewers, which is precisely why I wanted to make this video. Also, we can't forget the fire flower scene.
Did you know there's a Zadian flower with a more fascinating scent than anything in the human kingdoms? Go ahead, stop and smell this one.
What was that?
Eventually, they reach a tree.
Wow. This must be the biggest tree in the world. What do you call it?
A tree.
Once Callum finally reaches the top, Rayla offers a hand, in which Callum graciously accepts. The two arrive at a giant helicopter seed, and Rayla tells him to hold on tight as she cuts it loose.
Are you sure this is safe?
As long as you hold on tight.
As they fall, Callum grabs hold of her and hugs her closely, causing Rayla to smile endearingly. They both hold on to each other the entire way down, and once they land, they both separate awkwardly, and we can see both of them blush.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to.
It's okay. It was a bumpy ride.
That's the face I make whenever I make an innuendo without realizing it. Anyway, finally, the two of them arrive in a meadow, the surprise that Rayla wanted to show him.
So, what did you want to show me?
As Callum walks out into the field, he is introduced to the Adoraburs. This scene is just insanely cute. Rayla showing Callum a childhood memory and location, and Callum absolutely loving it. The looks Rayla gives him the entire time just makes me smile. Finally, after spending the night off camera somewhere, they arrive just outside the Silver Grove. Rayla admits that she feels happy and excited, but also terrified. Callum instantly comforts her.
You're just nervous. Once they see you and little baby Zim, I'm sure they'll help us.
But my new human friend might not be so popular.
Get ready to meet Elf Callum. Oi, mate. I'm an Earthblood elf. All me best mates are trees.
I don't think I'm alone when I say that this is one of my favorite scenes of the season. Rayla is just so done with this bullcrap. But finally, they reach the main entrance, and here comes one of my favorite Rayla moments ever. The Silver Grove dance. What's great about this scene is that the graphic novel Blood Moon Huntress reveals that only one person has to do the dance for an outsider to come in, as the Skywing elf Suro simply watches Rayla as she performs the dance. But here, Rayla tells Callum that he has to dance with her, even though he totally doesn't. Season 7 sort of backtracks on this a little bit, as in episode 4, both Renan, Rayla, and Callum perform to enter, but I'm sticking with the novel's canon because of the implications. Rayla just wanted to make him dance with her. This scene is absolutely gorgeous. The looks on both of their faces as their hands meet in the middle. Rayla looks happier than we've seen her before ever, and Callum shares a similar expression, followed quickly by amazement at the magic around him.
This is it. The Silver Grove.
Wow.
Isn't it amazing? I want to show you everything.
The way she grabs onto his hand, so eager to show him everything. Gods, I forgot how much I missed younger Rayla. They were just so precious. Just two young people learning how to love. It's crazy to think that I was their age when I first saw this. Anyways, enough reminiscing. What am I talking about? This whole video is reminiscing. Rayla brings up Moonberry Surprise, a delectable treat we will get back to when we reach Season 7. But, unfortunately, all of the amazement is short-lived when Callum notices that the elves don't have faces.
What's happening? What's wrong with them?
It's not them. It's me. A ghost.
Rayla explains what happened, how her people assumed she abandoned the other elves on her assassination mission.
But you didn't run away from anything. They just don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Rayla tries to take Callum's comfort and use it to think of a solution, and she thinks of Athari. She brings Callum up a set of steps, asking him if he remembered Renan.
I think so. Tall, pointy, aimed a bow at me. He seemed nice.
Rayla rolls her eyes during this clip, just listening to her dorky human rant and make jokes. A small blinking you'll miss it moment. Rayla opens the door and talks to Athari, but unfortunately, he can't see her or hear her. Callum immediately steps forward and tries to defend Rayla, slamming his fists on the table and yelling at this elf he doesn't even know, all for her.
You didn't even give Rayla a chance to explain herself.
Callum, it's no use.
Listen to me! Rayla doesn't deserve this!
Athari then sees Rayla through the reflection of one of the blades he's crafting, and he tells Rayla that Renan was gone because she abandoned him. These words, and the revelation that someone she considered family also ghosted her, makes her run away crying. Callum follows and finds her at a pond with a single lotus flower within it. Her flower, enchanted before heading off on her mission with the other elves. She tells him that this means that all the others had died, including Renan, or so they thought at the time. Callum tries to comfort her again, but this time it doesn't work. Rayla replies defeatedly, if it even matters. Thankfully though, Athari does come down and speak to Rayla, breaking the spell just for a moment, and she introduces Callum. And now, we move on to Season 3, Episode 4, The Midnight Desert, the episode where all of the feelings developed over their time spent together begin to pay off. It begins with them traveling towards the Storm Spire through the Moonshadow Forest. Callum once again tries to talk to Rayla about her feelings, but she just isn't in the mood to talk about it. She still feels the need to appear strong around him. Strong, stoic, and unbothered. Even going so far as to say she didn't really find the previous day all that hard on her. Callum told her about something called Big Feelings Time.
It would be understandable if you had some
Leave me alone.
big feelings.
If you don't stop pestering me about this right now, I'm gonna give you a big feeling on the side of your head.
And for now, Callum drops it. Around this time they encounter Nyx, someone who, unbeknownst to Rayla, had intercepted Athari's letter to Zubeia, informing her that her baby, Zim, was alive. And so, together, they head on to the Ambler. As they ride throughout the Midnight Desert with Nyx, Rayla stares longingly at her moon opal necklace, and Callum notices. He makes his way to her, once again trying to get her to open up, but again, it's futile.
What?
Nothing. I was just wondering what you're thinking about.
I'm fine, Callum. Like I already told you.
Now we arrive at the Midnight Desert Oasis. As soon as they arrive, Nyx interrupts both of them and spits out this incredible line.
Gets really cold here at night, so we'll need these. I wasn't sure, if you guys needed 2 blankets or just 1?
Ah, 2. Yeah, 2. Cause if there was just 1, then
2!
2.
Like, what? When I first saw this scene, I died. Which is why I'm here making this video. Okay, that joke sucked. Anyways, as the night went on, Callum was awoken by the sounds of Rayla crying next to him. Instantly, he gets up and reaches for her.
Rayla, did you say something? You okay? Rayla, it's okay.
But being caught in the act of crying causes her to run off, telling him to get away from her. Callum doesn't listen. Rayla tells Callum that she doesn't want him to see her like this, so weak and vulnerable.
I don't care if you're crying. I'm here with you.
But here, finally, Rayla begins to open up, saying that she's a mess, which Callum immediately denies. She says that she lost everything, and that there was nowhere she belonged now. Callum tells her that wasn't true, and that she was just going through a hard time. That was all.
That's not all. It's me, and it's all my fault. I failed them. I let them all down. They're right to reject me.
Rayla then says that she's not good enough and she never would be. Callum, having heard enough of Rayla's self-deprecation, tells her outright to shut up. This gets her attention and pulls her out of her current state of mind for a moment. Callum repeats himself, telling her that she's talking crazy.
Just listen to me. You're too good to feel this bad about yourself. I know that, and you should know that.
He tells her that she has true courage and a big heart. He's seen her get knocked down so many times before, but every single time she gets up again. That's real strength. He also tells her that she's 10 times funnier than any human he knows, which gets a laugh out of her.
See? See, you know you're amazing. You're smart and fast and beautiful. Really, you're the most amazing person I've ever met.
Hearing these words, Rayla leans in, and without thinking, kisses him on the lips, pulling it away with a smile, thinking that this was him admitting his feelings for her. But when she saw his face,
That's not what I was expecting.
we can take in a lot of information from this scene. First, and most obviously, it's Callum and Rayla's first kiss, but what's less obvious is that it's been theorized that Callum genuinely wasn't saying all those things so that she would kiss him, because that's not the kind of person he is. That would be taking advantage of her vulnerability. Callum instead was speaking his genuine thoughts about her character, her personality, and how much she means to him. It may have been an admission of love, or at least very deep feelings, but it was not said so she would kiss him, hence his reaction. While the aftermath of the scene shows an insane amount of awkwardness between the two of them, the scene after, where they discover Zim was taken by Nyx, shows Callum holding onto her arms as she shrieks in alarm. It's another small blink and you'll miss it scene, but look, he's holding onto her arms here. Nyx had untied their mounts and sent them beyond the Wonder Wall, and as Callum and Rayla attempted to rescue them, Callum's mount was corrupted by a soul-fang serpent. At the same time, a serpent tries to attack him, but Rayla bravely saves him, and together they run behind the barrier. Callum instantly helps her to her feet, holding onto her arms again to do so, and she holds onto his in reciprocation. Once the sun rises and the serpents are gone for the day, the two of them ride together, with Callum struggling very much to hold onto the saddle. Rayla tells him to just hold on to her. Callum blushes.
Oh, I mean, I guess I could do that if you don't think that would be
If I don't think that would be what?
weird.
You're already weird. Super weird. Just hold on.
Okay, sure, not weird. Put my arm around you seems very normal.
But despite Rayla's outward irritation, as soon as she feels his arms wrap around her, her expression shifts instantly. Rayla, girl, we know you like that feeling, okay? You're just lucky Callum is as dense as me when it comes to picking up hints from potential partners. Eventually, they catch up when the Ambler gets its foot stuck in a hole again. As they reach it, Rayla leaps onto the beast's legs, urging Callum to jump, saying she'll catch him. Callum, after a moment, decides to literally trust her with his life, and takes the leap, hanging on and beginning to slide off before Rayla catches him, just as she says she would. The look of appreciation she gives him melts my heart. As they reach the saddle, they confront Nyx when she flies away with Zim, but she doesn't get very far as Zim begins injuring her wings.
Here we go!
Wow! How'd you learn to do that?
I've never done that before in my life.
Once they save Zim, Nyx desperately calls out for help. With a look of annoyance, perhaps at herself for feeling the need to save her, Rayla tells Callum to get Zim back to the Ambler, and she leaps into action, slicing and dicing up a bunch of serpents, to the complete and utter amazement of Callum, who watches in awe at how incredible Rayla is. He became so distracted that when they both escaped, Callum didn't even remember where he was.
Callum, why aren't you running?
Right, sorry.
And finally, we reach the scene that every Raylan fan knows all too well. Nyx asks Rayla why she saved her, after everything she had done to them.
It's because Rayla is a hero.
What?
Rayla saves people. She's brave.
Callum tells Nyx that Rayla does what's right, even when it puts her own life in danger. With impossible odds and the risk of misunderstandings from her own people, Rayla remains selfless, strong, and caring.
That's what makes her a hero. That's what makes her Rayla.
Nyx instantly leaves the two of them alone, and now Callum just looks at her with nothing but admiration, respect, awe, and for sure, love in his eyes this time.
You are so...
Instantly, Callum remembers how the last kiss went and tries to apologize, but Rayla just rolls her eyes and uses the same word on him that he used on her back in the Oasis.
My lips were getting way ahead of me, and...
Shut up.
What? Wow.
And in that moment, ladies and gentlemen, Raylan became official. I'd like to take this moment to just give you all a moment to reflect on their journey up to this point. It's easy to say that Raylan was rushed and happened spontaneously, which it admittedly did, but when you look at the timeline laid out for you like this, it's easy to see why it still worked. They both found solace in one another during times of extreme change, Callum losing his stepfather and Rayla losing her home and her family. In both cases, they comforted the other and helped each other get through it. And besides, they're still teenagers at this point. Spontaneous relationships like this happen all the time at this age range. It's natural as hell, and I'm so glad they decided to act on their feelings instead of drawing it out. It's realistic. The point of this video. So, let's move on. The two love bugs, as Nyx calls them, are found sleeping together the next morning, which could have basically infinite implications and headcanons made. My personal headcanon is that there were many more kisses off-screen between them, discussions about what their relationship truly meant before they both passed out from exhaustion. But it's just a headcanon, a theory. As they are woken up by Nyx, Zim steps in front of them with his new lightning powers, and Rayla helps him up by holding his hand. After reaching the other side, they separate from Nyx and continue their journey, eventually arriving at the Storm Spire, encountering the remains of Zim's father, Aphazandum, frozen in stone. Zim, recognizing the statue as his own dad, cries, and the two comfort the baby dragon. Moments later, Ezrin arrives, and they all embrace, but the happiness is short-lived as Fifi dies from exhaustion and distance from the Moon Nexus. As Ezrin cries, Rayla places a comforting hand on Callum's shoulder, and Callum instantly places his hand on hers. Thankfully, Fifi is a phoenix, which means she can't die. She'll just be reborn into a feather. Anyways, the next scene is actually quite deep for both Callum and Rayla, as Callum expresses his hatred towards the statue in front of him for taking his mother, Sarai, away from him. Rayla becomes visibly uncomfortable, but as Callum explains, that discomfort turns into empathy.
It makes me sad and angry and confused.
Of course it does. It's painful. How could you feel any different?
Callum points out his mother's spear, piercing the dragon's heart. He lets his emotions out, with Rayla keeping her voice soft and low, listening to his words.
How am I supposed to feel about that?
I don't know, Callum.
Rayla tells Callum to look at the future rather than the past, pointing out how Ezrin and Zim, the children of Harrow and Avazandum respectively, are here playing with each other instead of fighting vicious battles. Rayla offers a hand, which Callum accepts, and they lean their heads together, watching Ezrin and Zim play. It's such a gorgeous scene, showing how far they've come to hear each other out and vent out their bottled up thoughts, to listen to one another, and to show empathy and offer words of wisdom to one another. And what makes this scene even better is that it's Rayla doing the empathizing, which is something she struggles with quite a lot, both in the past and the future. This scene shows us the Rayla buried deep within the assassin bravado, if you will. I'm yapping, but I think you get it. It's nice to see Rayla doing this. Moving on to the next episode, they are finally climbing the Storm Spire. As they climb, Callum gets a little nervous look on his face and asks Rayla,
When we get up there, are we gonna tell the Dragon Queen we're a thing?
I don't think it's gonna come up.
Callum smirks, playfully suggesting that they needed to hide it from her.
Kind of a secret forbidden romance situation?
Yes, that's right. The Dragon Queen must never know.
I understand. The world just isn't ready for what we have.
The look on Rayla's face when Callum mentions the word romance is telling. And this scene is honestly one of my favorites in the entire show for them. Definitely close to my top 10 list. They've become so flirty and playful it hurts. Anyways, I'm totally normal about these two, okay? Please don't unsubscribe. As they climb higher and higher, the air gets thinner. They pass a gateway that tells them to be prepared to draw their last breath, which they took as a warning at first, and as they climb, the asphyxiation gets to them. And eventually, Callum collapses into Rayla's arms, and they both collapse side by side. Ezrin wakes them up with information from Pyra, the red dragon that they freed in Season 2, and he tells Callum to draw his last breath as a magical rune. He does so, and moments later, he runs to Rayla. Callum, we all saw where that hand was going. I'm sorry, it's the animator's fault, not mine. They did not have to put his hand there.
We're gonna be okay.
Hey, that isn't part of the spell.
Yeah, so, you were gone for a while, and now, this is the thing, so...
What? What?
So now Ezra knows. Thankfully, he doesn't seem to be the teasy kind of little brother, so that's all good. Or something. This scene was really cute. Many people I've spoken to point out how Rayla literally pushes his head back a little with the kiss. She was eager, and so was he. Ezrin's reaction was of course golden, and a fan favorite moment of his. Finally, they reach the top, and as they're crossing the bridge to meet Ibis, they hold hands. Lots of people haven't even realized this before, so if this is your first time noticing, I'm glad I could be the one to show it to you. After they see the state Zubeia is in, asleep and unhealthy, Rayla can't stand to be there and goes back outside, where Callum follows her and sits next to her, asking if she's alright. Rayla explains that this is where her parents ran away, and how she can't stop thinking about that moment.
How it led to all of this. Being here. It hurts.
Eventually, Soren joins their group after he saw the evil that was his father, Viren, and he informs all of them of the army marching upon the Storm Spire. Callum decides to speak to Ibis, the Sky Mage, to try and learn some useful spells before the incoming battle. While Ibis doesn't directly teach him, he does show him Manus Pluma Volantis, a spell that gives the user wings. Unfortunately, Ibis believes all hope is lost and tells Callum to take Zim and run to safety to escape this place while they still can. As Callum approaches Rayla again, she lightheartedly teases him about learning any spells.
Well, did you get him to teach you any neat sky spells? Tornado Punch, Lightning Lash, Storm Sneeze?
Callum tells her what Ibis told him, and Rayla agrees, but then tells him that she couldn't go with them. Callum is shocked.
You and Ezrin should take Zim, but I can't leave. All of this happened because my parents ran away, so I have to stay and defend the Dragon Queen.
But you can't face an entire army by yourself. You'll...
Die?
As they hold on to each other, Rayla tells him that even if she dies, she'll just be paying the price that her parents should have paid a long time ago.
Just remember me, okay? Goodbye, Callum.
But Callum isn't about to let her die so easily.
So that's it. Just goodbye. You're gonna stay here and die out of pride?
Rayla insists that it's not pride, that it runs deeper than that, but Callum doesn't buy it, angrily telling her to not let her parents' mistakes drag her down, telling her she's not clearly thinking, and that she has to let it go. Rayla, with tears in her eyes, tells him that if he believes she can just let it go, he didn't know her at all, and that he never did. And with that, she runs off. This scene is very important. As I mentioned earlier in the video, two major aspects to any relationship is trust and understanding. The trust was there, but clearly the understanding still wasn't. And this issue doesn't go away either. It's the main cause of the events of Through the Moon, but we'll get to that. Oh god, I'm gonna have to read Dear Callum again, aren't I? As Rayla runs off, Callum swings his fists in frustration, clutching the necklace she just gave him, the moon opal, which was given to her by Ithari, which gives him an idea. Using what he learned from watching Lujane, he goes into Zubea's lair and crushes the moon opal, casting the spell Historia Viventum to see what truly happened to Rayla's parents. He finds her sitting at the top of the storm spire crying. He tells her that he knows what really happened, but Rayla says she doesn't want to talk about it and that she won't change her mind.
No. I did a spell to see what happened back then. When Viren took the egg.
What are you talking about? That's impossible.
It's true.
He then shows her a picture of her own parents, proof that Callum really did see them. He explained what really happened to them, how they weren't cowards, how they didn't run. They fought until the end.
They saved the egg. We're here and Sim is alive. All because of them.
The two then share a much-needed hug.
What does this mean? What should I do?
I don't know. But it's your choice. No one else's.
We should decide together.
You know, I sort of forgot just how good the Season 3 moments between them were. Callum being the attentive, caring boyfriend he is, and Rayla listening and using his wisdom, taking his words to heart, and offering her own comfort when needed. It's so realistic. The episode ends off with the battle plans being established when Amaya and Janai arrive.
This is it, huh?
This is it.
Now, we move on to the final episode of the season, starting off with Callum painting sky runes on his arms to try to recreate the wing spell he saw Ibis do. Unfortunately, at the time he was unsuccessful, but he was interrupted by his girlfriend, who seemed extra flirty, especially since this was likely the first time she ever saw him without his blue sweater on.
Did you pull a muscle in the middle of a jumpin' jack?
Oh, no. I was just greeting the sunrise. Hello, sun. How's it going?
As Callum nervously puts his coat back on, he tells her how it was a big day, adding that it could be their last.
To be fair, that's true every day.
Okay, but to be even more fair, it's not every day that you get attacked by an army of 10,000 monster soldiers.
Rayla then reaches for his hand to put him at ease, and they simply stare off into the sunrise together for a moment. Callum then takes a gulp. He realizes that this could be his last chance to tell Rayla how he truly felt about her.
Rayla, if today is our last day, I want you to know. Hey, guys!
Damn it, you big himbo! And believe it or not, there actually aren't any Rayla moments for the entire rest of the episode until the very end, where Rayla sacrifices herself by knocking Viren off the edge. Callum witnesses this and cries out her name, with tears in his eyes. Shortly after that, Callum took a leap of faith, jumping after her, begging for the Skywing spell to work as the three of them plummeted to their death below. The spell didn't work originally, but then Rayla made eye contact with the love of her life and reached out for him. In that moment, Callum admitted his feelings to no one, to everyone.
Rayla, I love you.
And with the feeling of love swelling in his heart, he closed his eyes, muttered the spell name, and to his amazement and relief, the spell worked. shedding his coat and sprouting wings. He dove after her and caught her, saving her life as Viren fell to his death.
Callum! But how did you...
Because I love you, Rayla. I really do.
I love you too, Callum.
The season ends off with Callum and Rayla holding hands in front of Zadia, proving to the Dragon Queen that things had really changed, that they had made a difference, just like they said they would. They truly had changed the world. And now it's time to move on to Through the Moon. Through the Moon takes place approximately just over a month after Season 3 concludes. It begins with Rayla having nightmares about Viren, the man she tackled off the summit of the Storm Spire, threatening to kill everyone she loves, including Callum. As she wakes up, we find that she is now living in Katalis with Callum and Ezrin. As Callum wakes her up with Fifi's feather, he explained that the reason he woke her up was because he thought she would make a cute face, but instead it was more of an angry cute. Lujane had sent them a letter telling them to bring Fifi's feather back to the Moon Nexus so they could bring the Phoenix back to life there. As Ezrin leaves, Callum asks Rayla if she was up late again, and she confirms this, hinting that these nightmares were common occurrences. It had only been a month or so, but during that time they were together, we could actually gather that it may not have been the warm, peaceful bliss that one would imagine a quote-unquote healthy relationship to be. Rayla has developed a paranoia and obsession about Viren, specifically him still being alive somewhere out there. Callum openly disagrees with this, saying that there is no way he could have possibly survived that fall, but Rayla correctly says that they never found the body. Callum tells her that it's time to move on, but Rayla genuinely doesn't know how. She still has so many questions left unanswered, both about Viren and what happened to Renan and her parents. Callum apologizes, telling her he hates seeing her like this, which to me implies that this wasn't the first time she had vented about her feelings on the matter. This is fine if Callum allows it, of course, which he most likely did because of who he is, but we have no idea how common these little things between them were. We have no idea just how much she strained him. We don't know if this was common or uncommon. Now, one might ask, why are these moments still happening? Why are they still unsure about one another? And I'll tell you why. They still lack that understanding I mentioned earlier. Callum doesn't understand, or rather, can't relate to Rayla's current state of mind, and Rayla can't understand why Callum can't see her point of view on the situation. She doesn't understand how he could have moved on so easily, and this is a hard topic to cover. A topic that was most likely just shoved under the rug in favor of more blissful times together. Something that was building up in the background. Getting back to the story, Rayla accepts his apology and also takes part of the blame, leaning on his shoulder and saying that she's been a mess lately. Callum jokes that he's usually a mess, which garners a reply about the scarf he was wearing. A scarf that would actually come to haunt her a couple years down the line in the short story Chasing Shadows. I'm not going to cover that story in this video, since it's specifically just Rayla's thoughts on Callum and not really a part of their timeline, but it's a great read though. I'll put the link in the description if I remember, and if I don't remember, somebody remind me please. Callum suggests using this trip to the Moon Nexus as a vacation, which Rayla happily agrees to. Once they arrive, Lujane treats them to dinner, and during this time, Callum and Rayla are sitting very close to one another, practically sharing a plate. Lujane catches on immediately, asking how long they've been a thing, claiming it was obvious when Callum asks. Lujane says that she's happy for both of them, saying how everything seemed to work out in the end. This garners a quiet response from Rayla, who starts talking about Viren again. Callum kind of rudely interrupts her to tell Lujane he can do magic, but Rayla seems to be thankful for the distraction, so it's all good. As they do the ritual to revive Fifi, Callum and Rayla hold hands and share soft looks, but Rayla quickly focuses back on her own plight. She genuinely can't enjoy anything, knowing that Viren might still be out there. After the ritual, Callum notices Rayla darting off from the rest of the group into the forest. He follows her, finding her sitting on a rock. He stumbles out of the woods clumsily, which garners a laugh from Rayla, and she asks him to join her on the rock. This conversation quickly turns very sour, as Rayla mentions the ritual being a direct reminder that her parents won't be coming back alive in some silver egg like Fifi did. Callum tries to spin it in a positive light, but this just irritates her. As he says he understands, Rayla directly calls him out on this, reminding him that he wanted her to move on earlier. Callum fights back, saying she's not the only one who's lost people, which is of course correct, but Rayla replies saying that the difference was he knew what happened to his lost ones. Rayla has no idea, she doesn't have that closure. Callum exclaims back, saying that Callum does know, saying that one of the people she's so worried about killed his stepfather, which is true. Runan was one of those people, and Runan killed Harrow, so they think. They both stand there, winded. Rayla eventually snaps at Callum, telling him that he hasn't moved on either, that nobody has. He could keep on believing in illusions if it made him feel better. And with that, she runs off in tears, with Callum begging her to stay, but it was too late. This is so much different from the bliss of the first 3 seasons, quote-unquote bliss. Remember the fight they had about Rayla's pride at the Storm Spire? It's the exact same thing, but amplified and focused on. Rayla isn't perfect, and it never has been perfect. There were always these underlying issues that they both decided to ignore until it got to this point, where the bottled up emotion spilled from the cracks forming in the bottle itself, if you will. In the past, they were both able to understand one another because issues were focused on quicker, or an experience happened where they managed to understand one another. For example, Callum being mad at Rayla for not telling him about what really happened to Harrow, only to find himself in her exact situation mere minutes later with being unable to tell Ezrin. He literally directly said to Rayla, "I understand why you couldn't tell me." On the Storm Spire, while the understanding didn't really happen, Callum was able to provide Rayla with some closure on her parents' honor, which, at the time, was enough to put the previous arguments aside about her pride. This time, however, they don't have that luxury, and they don't really even have a way to confirm if Rayla's suspicions are correct or not. So, they are both left guessing and trusting themselves while not being able to understand each other's POVs, try as they might. In fact, that's what the majority of this graphic novel is. Getting back to the story, Rayla once again has a nightmare about Viren killing Callum. That being 2 nights in a row now, Rayla wakes up in tears crying out his name, only to find him in a deep sleep, drool all over his face. She decided to take a walk to find Soren, someone who might share a similar opinion to her about Viren's disappearance, given that it was his father after all. When Callum woke up, he unfortunately took her absence to mean that she was still mad at him. Thinking he needed some advice, he went to find Lujane. There, he learns that with moon magic, the moon nexus can become a portal to a place between life and death, and how it was once even used for Callum's exact situation, to help loved ones find closure. Throughout the rest of the day, Callum and Rayla are separated, each doing their own thing, but they finally reconvene a little awkwardly that night in their hut. But the conversation quickly becomes pleasant again, and then Callum brings up what Lujane told him. Rayla becomes intrigued, and during this conversation, they agree to open the portal. Also, Callum mentions a line that Lujane used when giving him advice. White lies are illusions you build with your words to protect the hearts of those you love. A quote that Rayla would soon be taking a little too far, but we'll get to that. Callum tells Rayla that if anything goes wrong, he was going to jump in there after her, just like at the Storm Spire. Eventually, they end up touching foreheads and holding hands, with Callum being hopeful about finding closure for her. The next morning, they begin their plan. They tricked Alan into helping them reconstruct the moon hinge, since Lujane told Callum it needed to be fixed before the portal could work. This process took them many days and nights to complete, all under the guise that it was a surprise for Lujane, but finally, they finished it. Callum and Rayla rested back to back, catching their breaths. As Soren and Alan left to go find Lujane, Callum and Rayla enacted their plan, dancing in front of Rayla, which amused her greatly, until she joined in to help him with the spell. Despite their reconstructions, the spell destroyed what they had built, causing Rayla to dive after Callum and protect him, but the spell did open the portal. They knew it was now or never. As Lujane runs down, Callum urges Rayla to run, and she jumps into the Nexus Lake without really thinking. During this adventure of hers, she sees many things, but unfortunately, she doesn't find her parents or Renan, but she did find Viren in the chrysalis Erebos created. She knew now that he was in a state between life and death, dead but preserved, until 2 years later when Claudia would revive him with dark magic. But then, Rayla gets attacked by the dead spirits that we now know as the spirits of the In-Between. They drag her down, and Callum on the surface watches as her head dips underwater. With a feather given to him, he dives in after her, finds her, and together, They use magic and teamwork to escape the portal alive. Once they reach the surface, Callum immediately hugs her, saying he couldn't lose her. She hugs him back, and then they kiss, very passionately. The next morning, they talk about what they had seen. Rayla didn't get any answers on their family, but she decides to accept the fact that they're gone. Callum hugs her, telling her he's always here for her. She tells him that she did see Viren, though, and that she knew he was still a threat. This is such a complicated debate, because technically, they're both right. Callum believes Viren to still be dead, because Rayla saw his ghost in the portal, but Rayla believes him to be alive due to how the dead Viren had looked at her. And currently, he was dead, but his body was being preserved by Erebos, held in stasis, until Claudia could gather the ingredients necessary over the next 2 years to revive him with dark magic. Callum decides that he trusted Rayla's instincts, saying that they should go on a journey to find Viren together. Rayla immediately says that she has to go alone, to make sure Viren didn't hurt Callum too, something she likely learned from Runan, protecting Athari. But Callum is persistent, eventually getting her to agree to let him go with her. Callum says that them being together was the most important thing, and I want to touch base with that comment here in a moment. They share words of love together, and it seems like tomorrow they would embark on a journey together to find Viren once and for all. But that night, as the moon rose high in the sky, Rayla, in tears, left a letter she had written for Callum. She repeated Lujane's quote about white lies, apologizes to him in his sleep, saying he couldn't come with her. With that, she kissed him on the forehead for what would be the last time in many years and left to go hunt for Viren. That morning, Callum woke up to a letter. And, yes, I have to read it. I might need to do multiple attempts, but here it goes. Dear Callum, it was the deepest part of the night when I first sat down to write this letter. The moon still was high in the sky, and it was shining so brightly through the window that I could count the threads in my blanket. I thought it would be hours before you fell asleep, before I heard your adorable little snores, and I could get up and write this letter. But I guess risking certain death to save my life, again, kind of tires you out. I'm pretty sure you were dreaming as soon as you hit the pillow, and then it was just me and the moon and this blank piece of paper. Instead of writing, I spent most of the night just looking at your face and trying not to cry. The moon is setting now, and the sky is getting lighter. It's the hour Runan called the assassin's warning, when the protection of night is ending and it's time to return home. But I haven't left. I'm still here, still writing this, and if I stay much longer, you'll wake up and try to stop me from doing what I know I have to do, leaving. But I can't let you stop me, Callum, no matter how much I want to. I have to be strong, no matter what. And if you said even one word to me, I couldn't be. Even if I stayed until your eyes open and you yawn your silly morning yawn, I'll break. I'll still be here when the sun rises today, and the next day, and the next. I should go. I have to go. You're smiling in your sleep, Callum. You look so cute when you do that. I hope maybe it's because you're dreaming of me, and maybe I told you a dream joke that you'll remember even after you wake up. That can be my first gift to you. I know you'll have other gifts today, celebrating your 15th birthday. Lujane will make a delicious grub cake. Well, at least it will look delicious. Ezrin is going to sing you the Katala's birthday song he promised to teach me, but I won't have time to learn it now. I'll even bet that bait will give you an extra happy grunt before he goes back to being his usual grumpy self. I wish I could stay and eat fake cake and sing songs with you. I wish I could show you the Moonshadow birthday dance and kiss you one more time. So much for not crying. I'm getting tears all over the page. Okay, trying to wipe them is making it worse, and the words are getting all smudgy. I hope you can still read this. I've got one more gift for you, Callum. It's not cake or kisses, but it's something more important than that. I'm going to keep you safe. I have to. I love you too much not to. I still don't understand what I saw in the Moon Nexus, but I know what it means. I know it in my bones. Viren is alive, Callum, and I'm going to search for him. Alone. I'm sorry. I know I said we would go and find him together, but that was a lie. I think Lujane was right about white lies. They're illusions you build with your words to protect the ones you love. Please don't hate me when that illusion fades, Callum. I know this will hurt you, and I know you'll be angry with me, but don't hate me. I remember how I felt when my parents left me to join the Dragon Guard, like part of my heart was missing, and I would never feel right again. I thought I hated them when they did that to me. In the beginning, it felt so big and terrible, like raging despair. But over time, it became a soft, sweet ache, a reminder of that missing part of my heart. Renan and Athari told me something that's helped me understand, well, a lot of things, really. They said that sometimes we make sacrifices so that the ones we love don't have to. It's part of protecting them, part of protecting you. Taking on hard choices and going to dark places is an act of love. It's a gift. So, please let me give you this gift, Callum. Stay safe, stay in the light. Don't follow me, and don't look for me. I don't think you'll find me anyway. You're starting to stir, and the moon is almost gone. I have to go, but the sky is the strangest color purple, gray and gold all mixed together, like there's a storm wrapped around the sunrise. I'm not describing it right. It sounds awful, but it's beautiful. I hope it's still that color when you wake up. I hope you see it before you see this letter. And now you're drooling on the pillow, and even that is cute. Oh, Callum, I have to go. I have to. I want to give you one last kiss, but I can't risk you waking up. I have to go. I love you. I wish I could say that we will see each other again, but I don't know if we will. I hope so. Maybe then we can share some of Barrius's best cake. Maybe then I can give you that kiss. I will think of you under every full moon. Please don't let this hurt too much, but if it does, if you feel that soft aching, know that the piece of your heart isn't missing. It's not missing at all, Callum. I'm carrying it with me. Always. I love you. I love you so much. Rayla. God damn it. So let's talk about this. Trust and understanding has always played a big part in Callum and Rayla's relationship, and now Rayla has just broken the trust because of the lack of understanding. Let me explain this in the best way I can. Growing up in the Silver Grove, Rayla learned from Renan and Athari. This is directly quoted from the letter. They said that sometimes we make sacrifices so that the ones we love don't have to. It's part of protecting them, part of protecting you. Taking on hard choices and going to dark places is an act of love. It's a gift, so please let me give you this gift, Callum. Rayla learned her whole life that she had to be the one to make this sacrifice. It's part of who she is, part of her culture as a Moonshadow assassin. But, on the other hand, Callum was raised by Harrow and Sarai, and they preached to Callum the importance of being there for the ones you love, to accompany them through thick and thin. Example of this was Sarai accompanying Harrow on his mission to slay the Magma Titan, even though she was staunchly opposed to the idea in the first place. But she still went with Harrow because she loved him, and this journey ended up killing her. So, we have one partner who believes that they need to go alone to protect their loved ones, and another partner who believes that companionship was the best way to protect their loved ones. It's insanely complex. The issue here, though, is that Rayla didn't give him a chance to even have a say in the decision. She lied to him, saying he could come, but she decided that she would go alone without him anyway. That is why the trust was gone, and was a big reason for Callum being as upset with her as he was in Season 4 when she comes back. They need time now to rebuild that trust again, and to try and gather some understanding as well. And so, with that, let's fast forward 2 entire years, on to Season 4. By now, Callum had just turned 17, and Rayla is now 17 as well, though her birthday will quickly pass by without any mention at some point during Season 5. As Rayla returns from her mission, unfortunately unsuccessful, she comes with the expectation that Callum would be overjoyed to see her, and would welcome her back with open arms, the same way Athari welcomed Renan back after a dangerous mission. But she quickly learned that Callum wasn't exactly going to let her back into his life with open arms, even after 2 years. There were many conflicting feelings on his side, lots of confusions about how he should feel, which he tells Ezrin when they're in the Drakewood alone. This conflict within Callum dominates his emotions towards Rayla for most of Season 4. As she returns, Callum is angry. Despite her words about him looking nice and how nervous she was to see him again, he doesn't want to talk to her at all, telling her he was going to bed. Rayla grabbed his arm, wanting to talk, but Callum is really not in the mood, and for good reason. As I mentioned previously, she had hurt him badly and broke even the basics of trust with him. Despite how he wanted to feel in that moment, despite still loving her, these negative emotions won out within him, especially after she revealed she never found Viren. That's when Stella is introduced, which lightens the tone of their conversation a little bit. Rayla then admits that she knew her leaving hurt him, even if she didn't understand precisely why yet. That realization will come in Season 5 from a third-party source, Aunt Maya. Callum confirms with a shaky breath that maybe that was the case. He then insists that he really didn't want to talk. Rayla respects his wishes, suggesting they should just sit next to each other silently and not talk, which Callum reluctantly agrees to. As the morning arrived, Rayla tells a sleeping Callum some words she had probably been thinking of saying for months.
We had something so special, but I became so obsessed with revenge that I risked losing the best thing I ever had. You. Aww. You're so gross.
I still have no idea where she went, by the way. This scene is interesting to me, though, because it shows that Rayla does actually have a bit of understanding as to how her actions hurt him. Obviously, it's not really hard to guess, especially after the conversation the previous night, though I will admit, I don't know if I necessarily like the use of the word revenge. It sort of puts Rayla in a selfish light, and I don't think that was intended by her actions at all. This line has been used by many Raylan haters to prove that Rayla was just selfish and never considered Callum's feelings, but unfortunately, intended or not, it was canonically said, so perhaps Rayla is a little bit selfish. I'd like to think that she wasn't though, and that this was just a slip-up from the writers, because her initial mission was to hunt Viren down to protect Callum, and I don't think at any point it mentioned it being a mission for revenge. I could be wrong though. What do you folks think? Let me know down in the comments. The next time Callum and Rayla interact is after Ibis's final breath warns Zadia about the fallen star's return, Erebos. When Rayla was trying to remember Ibis's name, Callum irritatedly questions her about how she couldn't remember even after fighting beside him at the Storm Spire.
I do remember. Just wasn't sure his name.
Well, maybe you might know that if you'd been here the past 2 years.
Callum.
What? She would?
I suppose so.
Ezrin interjected. The new threat of Erebos, the fallen star, was real, and for now, they had to put aside their differences and work together. Next time they truly interact was when facing Erebos in the mirror. Rayla was forced to watch as Callum was possessed by the Star Touch elf, not wanting to risk getting too close and potentially harming him. This experience, while short, greatly affected Callum, and then the next morning, he sat overlooking the sunrise, just like he had done the day of the battle 2 years ago. Rayla soon joined him, reminiscing on those days, talking about how he spread his wings and saved her, but Callum was still not in the mood to talk. In fact, he was crying, possibly over Ibis's death, possibly over the possession, or possibly due to him thinking the exact same thing as her, reminiscing on days when they were together. Rayla asks if he's okay, and Callum replies honestly.
Not really.
Rayla asks if he wanted to talk about it, but before he could, Soren interrupted them yet again, even remarking how this had happened before. I think this scene is interesting because while a talk may have worked out here, I honestly don't think Callum was in any mental state to have a meaningful conversation with her. Not yet. He had so many emotions running through his head at once, and I can hardly imagine the thoughts flowing through his brain. But thankfully for Callum, Rayla had also matured a great deal during the 2-year hiatus. She became more empathetic and attentive towards him. She didn't try to force him back into being with her, nor did she try to rush things. A while back, I made a video analyzing pretty much all of Arc 2 Raylan before they got back together again, and in that video, I focused on why Raylan got back together again. I would like to do something similar here, and point out one of the most positive aspects about Rayla's character in regards to her relationship with Callum. Rayla's patience. Rayla understood quite quickly that Callum was conflicted about her. She realized that things were not the same as they were before she left, and she also realized that it was not within her right to assume or initiate anything with Callum unless he did so first. They still loved each other, quite clearly, and they still had fond feelings, but Callum needed time to figure out how to act on those feelings again, whether or not it was appropriate to, and whether or not it was within his own self-interest to fall for her again, to risk being betrayed again. I say that boldly and mean it as such. His feelings towards her at this point in time are not great at all. And Rayla understood this. To an insane degree, she understood this. As we look through these scenes, again, I will be putting an emphasis on Rayla's patience whenever she displays it, and how this patience positively impacted Rayla as a couple, even if not official again yet. I want you to remember this. Rayla only reciprocates Callum's initiations the entire time, from Season 4 up to them becoming official again in Season 6, and this scene displays the first evidence of her patience. She gave him the opportunity to talk, but notice how she was hesitant while saying it? This tone was one of giving Callum the choice. Had Soren not interrupted them, Callum may have said no, and I personally believe that Rayla would have respected his decision, maybe choosing just to sit next to him again, like that night in the castle, or maybe letting him have time by himself. We don't know for sure, obviously, but it's fun to speculate. During the meeting, they decided to go find Rex Igneous at Umber Tor. As they arrive at the front gates and listen to the two doormen, I don't know their names, argue back and forth, we can see a small hint of the old Raylan bond still being present, as they both share judgeful looks towards their new hosts. As they search for the secret entrance into Umber Tor, they find themselves in the uncharted forests of the Drakewood. As they encounter some Drake riders, Rayla tells them all to stay out of sight while she goes and looks for the entrance alone. Soren tells her that she can't just go off alone, and so she suggests that Callum joins her.
Okay, fine. Callum and I will go look for the entrance.
But Callum immediately volunteers Soren rather than himself, not wanting to be alone with Rayla at all. Rayla is visibly disappointed at this, but regardless, she accepts Soren and looks back longingly at Callum, almost apologetically. But the High Mage doesn't even look in her direction. While they're both on their own journeys apart, I will actually focus on the dialogue, even if it's not technically a Rayla moment, because I think it's important. Soren explains to Rayla how Callum felt when she left, saying how miserable he was, which makes Rayla's face sink and what looks like sadness about their situation. Rayla has always had a self-esteem and self-worth problem, so hearing from Soren how badly she hurt the love of her life probably makes her depressed as hell. But it does serve as a method of understanding Callum's feeling more, even if she still doesn't quite grasp why her leaving hurt him. Keep in mind, all she's ever known is the example set by Athari and Renan. Meanwhile, Callum and Ezran talk about Rayla, too. Ezran, the mediator, tries to get Callum to lighten up about Rayla more, and it actually has a little bit of an impact as he smiles and jokes about how hard relationships are. But backtracking a little, Callum describes his feelings towards the entire situation.
That makes a lot more sense.
You're right, though. It feels silly with everything that's going on, but I don't know how to feel about Rayla either.
She's been trying hard to get things back like they were.
But things aren't like they were. She messed them up. And when she came back, I was so happy, but so mad at the same time. I wish I could just forgive her, but it's so hard.
We'll get back to these words when Season 5 comes around, but it's worth it to note that Callum was happy to see her return. It's just that things are confusing for him right now, as they should be. It's so realistic. While Soren and Rayla are on their mission, they encounter a Drake rider attacking a Drake. Soren wants to protect it, while Rayla wants to stay focused on her bigger mission. During this time, they end up splitting apart, and when Rayla returns to the campsite without Soren, she plays it off as just being fine. Little does she know, he was actually captured by the Drake riders and thrown into the pit of despair. As she wakes up the next morning, she realizes with a shock that Soren never came back. She starts calling out his name. Callum wakes up and immediately asks if Rayla was okay, and when Rayla explained, Callum's emotional wells came back up, and he questioned why she hadn't mentioned it last night. I think it's fun to note that Callum's immediate instinct was to ask Rayla if she was okay, even after just waking up. Despite how he was feeling, it took him waking up a little bit to remember that he was supposed to be mad at her. The conversation ends quickly though once Zim arrives to the group. Callum comes up with the idea to use Zim to look for Soren, but when the plan goes horribly wrong, Zim ends up captured too. Callum explains that it was a stupid idea to send Zim up there.
It was a stupid idea to send Zim up there!
Yeah, that was your idea.
Well, why didn't you tell me my idea was stupid?
Ezran then yells at them both, knocking some sense into them, making them realize that now was not the time for pointless, petty arguments. They were still a team, and they needed to find Zim before it was too late. Immediately after that, we get a small moment where Callum instinctively hands the staff to Rayla for her to hold as he flips through his spellbook. Believe it or not, this isn't the first time he's done this. Back in Season 2, before going out into the storm, he hands his items over to Rayla for her to keep safe while he was gone. Old habits die hard, it seems. Callum casts a spell to create a fog covering the ground so the riders couldn't find Zim, and then Ezrin creates a plan to knock out the leader using Rayla as a distraction. All of these plans work beautifully, and as Callum catches bait, Rayla lands behind him, placing a hand on his back very subtly while talking to bait. Ezrin then runs over and hugs them both, and we get a moment where Rayla nearly hug again, but instead of turning sour like before, it just turns awkward instead, similar to how they were between their first kiss at the Oasis and their second kiss on the Ambler. It's actually a common theme within Arc 2 that Raylan sort of restarts again. Season 1 and 4 was rebuilding the trust, Season 2 and 5 was falling in love, and Seasons 3 and 6 was becoming official. From this point on, Callum decided it wasn't worth the energy being mad at her anymore. He just couldn't. In fact, in the next scene, they share a moment together where Rayla believed Soren had died and that she was responsible. Instead of getting mad at her, though, Callum actually gently tells her not to blame herself.
This is all my fault. I left him alone. I shouldn't
Rayla,
have.
don't. We can't know what happened for sure.
We can see Callum slowly warming up to Rayla again, and it's honestly really fun to go back through these moments like this, to look at them through this perspective, knowing they do end up getting together again in a few seasons. And the moments don't stop either. When they enter a massive gemstone cave, Rayla finds the skeletal remains of an elf, placing her hand on Callum's and asking if that's how they would find Soren.
Soren is strong. He'll find a way to survive.
A hand on her shoulder. Keep that in mind. As the season progresses, we see lots of small moments where Callum is still very awkward around her, such as the scene where he grabs a moon opal.
Moon ones are the prettiest.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, the opals.
Poor girl. Callum, I know you're nervous and still upset, but you can't deny, Rayla is a goddess in Arc 2, okay? Just call her beautiful. A small moment that happens next is literally completely in the dark, but Rayla decides to do a cartwheel in the pitch black of Umbertor. Meanwhile, Callum urges her to please safely cross the bridge. It's just a fun moment.
This bridge isn't so treacherous. In fact, I'm going to do a cartwheel.
Rayla, I'm not sure that's such a great... Can we please slowly crawl, please, across this bridge?
I was teasing Callum. Just lighten up and enjoy the darkness.
But moving on from small moments, we actually get one of the most important moments of the season. As they rest near the lava pit, Callum quietly wakes Rayla up, asking her to talk. She assumed that this will be about them as a couple, or something regarding about how he feels about her. You can see it in her eyes when he says her name, the way she moves her hair out of her eyes, and the tone of her voice.
Whatever it is you have to say to me, everything will be fine.
Whew. Okay. Rayla.
Yeah?
But what he actually said was probably the last thing she expected.
I need you to kill me.
What?
Callum explains, and for a moment, Rayla listens. He tells Rayla that if Erebus possesses him again, she needed to kill him. That way Erebus wouldn't be able to hurt anybody using Callum as a vessel. He described the experience as him feeling weak and out of control.
I was his puppet. I'm not afraid that he'll hurt me. I'm afraid that he'll use me to do awful things or hurt people I care about.
Notice how when he says that, the camera focuses on both himself and Rayla? Now, Rayla's response to this scene is debatable, but also understandable, I think. How would you react if the love of your life asked you to kill them? Rayla reminds Callum that destiny is a book you write yourself.
Callum, you're the destiny is a book you write yourself guy. No one can control you or make your choices for you.
Something that he said in his dark magic dream. How Rayla knows about that quote, I don't know, but Callum probably told her at some point. Callum then admits he's afraid, wondering if he's on a path of darkness. Rayla scoffs, telling him to just...
Then take a different path, dummy.
This scene has been the target of lots of debates and controversy, because it really does seem that Rayla was not taking him seriously, or just simply wasn't being helpful. Like the use of the word revenge earlier, I wish this scene were written a little bit differently. However, Rayla's advice, while short, is meaningful and genuine. Callum himself told his dark self in Season 2 that Destiny was a book you write yourself. In other words, he chooses his own fate. My interpretation is that Rayla telling him to choose a different path is her telling him that no matter what happens, he's the one writing his own story for himself. He chooses what path he goes on. And by the way, this does come back in the finale of the show.
That's the destiny I choose. The one I write for myself.
But that's not all that makes this scene important. Notice what Callum did in this scene? He confided in her again. Instead of being angry and avoiding talking to her like he did before, he's now coming to her to talk about how he's feeling about a situation. In other words, he trusts her again, which is huge. The progression towards becoming official again hits the ground running after this scene. Moving on to the next episode, we have a nice moment where Callum gives Rayla the moon opal so she can use moon magic on Zim. It's a small moment, but just look at these nervous reactions. Rayla had just used magic, something that Callum was very happy about. Also, this little critter, putting the puzzle pieces together. She knew before any of us did, I think. Once they enter Rex Igneous's lair, Rayla decides to give up her butterfly blades to the Archdragon as a gift. After Rayla gave up her blades, Callum places a hesitant but gentle hand on her shoulder, knowing how much the blades meant to her, and he keeps his eyes on hers when she meets his gaze. Once again, a hand on the shoulder. Remember how I told you to remember that? So far, Callum has done it twice before Rayla has done it at all, but in the next scene they share, which is in the next episode after Callum saves Ezran from Dragonfire, Rayla finally reciprocates the gesture, placing a hand on his shoulder, which garners a very happy smile from Callum. But next, we learn that Viren is actually alive, that Rayla's instincts in leaving in the first place were not without merit, which is also massive because Callum immediately understands that Rayla was actually right this whole time. And because of this, when she says she has to go after him, Callum lets Rayla go after Viren on his own volition, which she is extremely thankful for. Now, of course, comes the moment that changed their entire dynamic. The Season 4 finale hug. Callum thought Rayla was dead, and he cries, but when she reveals herself, Callum immediately hugs her. This hug, which was notably initiated by Callum, was a major turning point. As I said, Rayla only reciprocated Callum's initiations. If Callum gave Rayla a romantic gesture, she took it as a green light to employ said gesture in return at a later date. So now that he's hugged her, she knows that she can hug him back without potentially spooking him.
I'm so glad you came back.
Callum saying that he was glad Rayla came back has multiple meanings. It refers both to her returning to him now, in that moment, after he thought he had lost her again, as well as referring to her returning to him in the first place after those 2 years. She came back to him, and her leaving again made Callum realize just how much his love for her and his desire to be with her overpowered his negative views about her from before. From this moment on, Callum was ready to let her back into his life with warm, open arms, but just because they hugged doesn't mean that Callum's conflict vanished. They still needed to take things slow. He may not be angry anymore, but confused? Perhaps. And now, we move on to Season 5. As Season 5 begins, we can see that Callum and Rayla have been sharing a bedroom together now that she was living back in the castle. The same bedroom that Callum and Ezran used to share, in fact, now that Ezran slept in the king's quarters. Callum and Rayla start the season off showing that they have both moved past that initial awkwardness and irritation of Season 4, with Rayla even telling Callum playfully that he should take a bath to help him connect to the Ocean Arcanum. Now, this episode in particular is the subject of lots of criticism towards both Callum and Rayla for different reasons, and this is because of what Rayla in particular is doing in this episode. She, while hunting for Viren in the end of Season 4, had got the coins back that contained her parents and Renan, given to her by Claudia. But she is keeping those coins a secret from Callum, and throughout this episode, Rayla sneaks around, steals his keys to get into Viren's old catacombs, gets caught with the murder weapon of Harrow, and is arrested. However, during their interactions this season, Callum is ever kind to her, talking to her casually and easily, and when we get to this scene where Callum learns of Rayla's arrest, he immediately disregards all of her dishonest behavior, claiming that he trusts her unconditionally.
Don't you want to know what she was up to? Why she did all this?
If she didn't tell me, she has a good reason. I know this. The tides are true as the ocean is deep.
What does that mean, Prince Callum?
It means I trust her, unconditionally. Let her go, now.
Callum trusting Rayla unconditionally is a beautiful moment in my opinion. He knows her well enough to have complete confidence that whatever she's doing is not with malicious intentions. This is of course proven almost immediately after when Rayla comes up to him offering to explain herself. But Callum tells her that he meant what he said.
You don't need to explain or justify anything to me. You can tell me when you're ready.
Thank you, Callum.
Rayla is infinitely grateful for this. Callum then somewhat nervously adds that he is curious about what she's up to, but then he brings up two words.
But hopefully soon. I mean, I am curious. But boundaries? Trust?
Some people take this as Callum being a pushover, but I disagree strongly. In fact, I think it shows a high level of maturity that he trusts her to this degree. Callum is his own person and can make his own decisions and have his own feelings about her. He's allowed to feel how he wishes to feel. If he decided to forgive her, it's not because he's a pushover, I don't think. Hell, I'd say it's the exact opposite. It's because he knows his own desires and he respects himself enough to make that decision for himself. I do want to emphasize my own take, and that is this. It is not up to the fanbase to decide whether his actions and decisions are right or wrong. It's all subjective. The Dragon Prince itself is subjective. Like, I actually have agreed with some takes on Callum being a pushover before, but that's just another reason why the show is just so damn good. It's not black and white. Everything is gray. The nuance is chef's kiss the whole time. The characters have many, many perceived flaws that some people view as more problematic than others, and the fact that these characters can spark such a wide range of debate just goes to show how well written they are. Moving on to episode 2, this episode was very much Raylan dominated. They begin to go on their journey to Luxaria, and along the way they share many nice moments, compromising and debating on their next move, letting one another decide things which leads to their stay at the inn, and as they leave the inn, they're even flirting with one another.
I hope staying in that inn wasn't too cutesy quaint for your rugged moonshadow taste.
But there are two scenes in particular that I want to focus on. The first one is when they are crossing the border. The title of this episode is called Old Wounds, and I think that this is directly referring to Raylan. As they cross, Rayla describes the border crossing like a scar, but Callum sees it differently. Callum sees the scar as a bridge connecting their two worlds. And now, here they were, crossing it together.
It's an old wound. That's healing.
I've seen many analyses made on this scene, and almost all of them describe this white flower as symbolism of healing. So not only does this scene have amazing visuals and the soft look from Callum and Rayla, I mean, God, Callum just looks so happy here, but it also just represents that Raylan is indeed healing, moving on past that original conflict in Through the Moon. But even better than this scene, in my opinion, is the stargazing clip.
What do you call that star? The brightest star in the sky. We call it the South Star. Humans use it to navigate, you know, to find their way in the endless darkness of the night. What's happening?
Callum, I'm glad we can be here together, looking at the stars.
This is the first time we see Rayla initiate something first. I said before that Callum's negative feelings toward her had faded, but his confusion still remained, and this scene shows it in full display. Up until this point, Callum had initiated virtually every big romantic act with her, but here, Rayla leans on his shoulder in a comforting, romantic gesture herself. And Callum is spooked. This scene right here is amazing to me because, well, it showcases what could have happened had Rayla been less patient. Had Rayla initiated things earlier when he was still upset, this reaction could have been amplified to a very negative degree. Callum doesn't really know what's happening. He's not just nervous about a pretty girl leaning on his shoulder. He's confused as to what he should do. He doesn't know how to feel. The conflicting emotions arise in his face, and you can literally see them in this shot. It's animated so well. Luckily, this act was quickly reciprocated by Callum once he realized that this is what he wanted. He wanted her again. That closeness. You can see the moment his mind comes to that conclusion, and the bliss on both of their faces is apparent as hell. However, this bliss is short-lived, as in their sleep, they are attacked by a corrupted Banther. We see Callum and Rayla working together to take it down, with Rayla dealing the final blow with an explosive arrow. No matter what has happened between them, Raylum is still Raylum. Their synergy and their teamwork has always been very strong, and this scene brings me back to the days where they were working together to get past Sol Regum. But, despite all of these moments, there is still an underlying weirdness to them, and it mostly comes from Rayla's secret about the coins. And I'm about to tell you why her hiding the coins was probably the best choice she could have possibly made. After working together to make it into Luxaria in one piece, Janai forbids them from going to the Great Bookery. We see them both frustrated by this, and we see them both come up with a plan to sneak out themselves.
A few days ago, I was pacing and doing nothing in a castle. Now I'm pacing and doing nothing in a tent. If anything, that's worse.
I mean, we fought together at the Storm Spire. She saw me zap dark magic monsters.
She can't stop us.
Nobody can.
So we're going to Luxoria, right?
Too right we are.
They do get caught, but they are allowed to go. And once they arrive at the Great Bookery, things start to get insane. As I mentioned in the start of this discussion, the younger, less emotionally stable Rayla would constantly vent to Callum about her parents in Renan, especially in Through the Moon. However, Rayla is now 18 years old. She's grown up a considerable amount, both physically and emotionally, and Callum has too. They've both had lots of time to think and accept lots of things. As they arrive at the Great Bookery, Rayla and Callum separate, and during this time, Aunt Maya tells Rayla that she abandoned Callum and broke his heart. Rayla defends her actions, saying she left to protect him.
You broke his heart.
I was trying to protect him. I left without him because I couldn't bear to put him in danger. I knew I had to be strong alone.
These words actually make Amaya smile, because she can see herself in Rayla, that determined spirit to be strong for those around you. She tells Rayla about Sarai, Callum's mother and her own sister, and as she explains what she learned about companionship being a form of love, Rayla finally learns precisely why Callum had been so devastated by her leave. She learns that love and trust grow a kind of strength much stronger than a single individual can possess.
To have that kind of strength, it's not enough to love someone. You have to trust them to share the burdens you carry.
Rayla takes these words to heart in a very positive way. She held on to each and every word Amaya said, and she listened, because in the very next scene, Rayla tells Callum that they need to talk. People have made the argument many times that Rayla hasn't matured at all during the 2-year time skip, and I'm about to show you why that take is objectively false. It's not even just opinionatedly false, it's just false. Let's compare Rayla from Through the Moon to Rayla now. In Through the Moon, Rayla shared the burden of her parents with Callum, but it was in a way that emotionally drained both of them and strained their relationship. Remember how she couldn't feel happy about anything? We aren't really even 100% sure if she asked for consent before doing this, something that is vitally important. Rayla has had 2 years to think about this, and so, when she gets her family back as coins, she decides to keep it a secret, partially because they weren't really a thing yet, but mainly because she knew she had to ask for his consent first. And look what is happening in this scene right here.
Callum, there's a burden I'm carrying, and I've kept it a secret. And maybe that's part of what's making things weirder with us. But I know that I trust you to help me carry this. If you're okay with that.
In my opinion, this scene showcases the biggest difference in Rayla's maturity level out of any other scene in the entirety of the second arc. The past Rayla, prone to venting constantly, is now standing before Callum asking for his consent before letting him in on the secret about the coins. She remembers the argument she had with them. She remembers and likely realizes how much her venting strained them. So now, Rayla stands before him, giving him the choice to share the burden with her. Callum tells Rayla that they had been through a lot, that a lot had changed, but not everything. Back then, and now, he would do anything for her.
I would do anything for you.
She then tells Callum about the coins, and of course, Callum instantly tries to help. But once again, we can see just how much Rayla has matured as she states that she knows the mission comes first, and that they could all rely on her to stay focused on the mission at hand. A massive difference! Look how attentive she's become. It's amazing. And right after that, we reach yet another moment where Callum initiates something romantic. He takes her hands in his, gently holding them, and softly places the coins back into her hands before calmly closing them. This is the first time Callum had held her hands since she came back, as far as I remember, and he continues to hold on to them until Rayla turns away a little guilty. This scene not only displayed yet another moment of affection and initiation on Callum's part, but also an immense amount of trust on both of their parts. Rayla trusting Callum with the knowledge of her parents, and Callum trusting Rayla to tell him about them in the first place as a callback to the first episode.
But hopefully soon. I mean, I am curious.
Callum immediately wants to help Rayla, and I personally believe that this is why Rayla turned away from him guiltily in this shot, telling him not yet. Perhaps she remembered how he always tried to help with her family back before she left him through the moon, and seeing him like this again made her feel a little guilty, but maybe not. She tries to emphasize that getting her family back was not the current mission, but Callum insists that he actually read about a spell in the bookery that could help them, and despite the setting sun, Callum tries to find the information he read about. When they reconvene, the sun has set and Callum is describing the quasar diamonds and star scraper to her.
The Star Scraper.
Never heard of it.
It happens to be the same place where they keep the Nova Blade.
That's great! What's a Nova Blade?
But then, since they have lingered too long, the setting sun allowed the corrupted Banthers to surround them in great numbers. Callum and Rayla once again display their synergy when taking down some of the Banthers, combining Callum's magic with Rayla's weapons, twice, even saving Aunt Maya at one point. But as they are celebrating their victory, they become surrounded by far too many Banthers to handle. In this moment, both Callum and Rayla think it's all over. No one is coming, and it's 3 verses in an uncountable amount. So, with a somber look, Callum reaches for Rayla's hand.
Rayla, I was wrong. I waited too long. I hope you know.
I know.
This scene is absolutely beautiful. No other words for it. Many people first saw this and assumed that Callum had completely put aside his own feelings of anger towards her, and that this somehow showed that Callum had lost all his self-respect. But personally, that's not how I interpret this scene at all. Callum saying he was wrong does not mean that he believes Rayla was right in her decision to leave him. Instead, this is Callum expressing his guilt and regret about his own feelings towards Rayla when she first came back. Ultimately, despite what she did to him, and despite all his initial confusion, all that mattered to him deep down was that she was alive and safe. Callum saying he was wrong was him acknowledging his own regrets on how he treated her when she returned. Granted, it may have been justified and deserved for how she left him, but Callum is a much different person than many of those who question why he doesn't stay mad or demand an apology. It's clear that he doesn't need one, even if he's entitled to it. Aaron Ehas, the creator of The Dragon Prince, backs up this interpretation as well from a Real James interview. He says that in that moment, Callum recognizes how he's kept these walls up, but in this moment, he regrets that the walls were ever up in the first place, and this is his way of trying to tell her that, because, well, they're about to die. Thankfully, they are saved by Zadia, Ezrin, Corvus, and Soren, allowing Callum and Rayla to escape, overcoming a huge emotional hurdle in the process. This episode was downright spectacular. Rayla learned to share the burden. It's huge. The gang then agrees to make their way to Archmage Akiyu, and we have a lovely moment where Callum reaches for her hand and holds it, telling her that they would go underwater together, since Rayla was still traumatized about water. This once again shows the overarching theme of Amaya's lesson to Rayla: stronger together, as a couple. With Callum's help, Rayla manages to swim through the watery cave and make it to the other side, and Callum never let go of her hand the entire time, despite it probably slowing them both down. The rest of the episode doesn't really have any Raylan specifically until the very end, where Rayla listens as her dork rambles on about the differences between an amulet and a talisman. Bro, I don't know either. Please tell me, what is the difference between an amulet and a talisman? In the next episode, they're forced to find a captain that could help them get to the Sea of the Castouts since Zadia became infected by the corrupted Banthers. Rayla remembers the place she had visited during her 2-year hiatus, Scumport. We do see a lovely little moment where Rayla rambles on about getting from one place to the next, and Callum lets out just this happy little sigh.
Is this the place?
No. Well, it's a place that will take us to another place, and from that place, we'll find a way to the place we're going.
Possibly remembering just how much he had missed her, and how happy he was that she was back. When Rayla gets on the boat, Callum instinctively reaches out a hand to help her, but Rayla is just being goofy. This moment makes me chuckle a little bit every time. The next time Callum and Rayla interact in a substantial way is when Callum uses the spell to take Finnegrin's wind away. As he collapses from the spell, Rayla immediately catches him, supporting him like she has always done. Unfortunately, despite Callum's best efforts, Finnegrin and his crew still manage to catch up to them, and now we reach one of the most insane episodes in the entire show for me, Finnegrin's Wake. Callum is separated from Rayla and is physically beat and tortured by Finnegrin and Deadwood when he refuses to use dark magic for him to kill Domina Profundus, the archdragon of the ocean. When Rayla sees the love of her life bloody and bruised, on his knees from pain, she physically screams his name and cries out in horror, demanding them to let him go.
Callum! What is he doing to you? Let him go!
She bites Deadwood's arm, managing to rip out a chunk of wood from his body, which she then uses to undo her handcuffs. She leaps into action, tackling Deadwood to the ground and arming herself. With a yell, she charges at Finnegrin, but he's quicker, casting Venus Frigoris, causing her to stop in her tracks as her blood begins to freeze in her veins. She screams out in pain, causing Callum to run right by Finnegrin and cup her face in his hands. He helplessly looks into her pained eyes, watching her suffer, watching her die right in front of him. Callum's rage takes over, and he seizes Finnegrin, punching him square in the face with a very solid punch, I might add. Who taught this boy how to punch? While this does stop Rayla from being tortured, it causes Callum to be knocked out cold by Deadwood and brought back into the captain's quarters, where he is once again chained to the wall. Now, one of the reasons this episode is interesting is because we actually have an alternate version of the dialogue from the scene given to us by the writer of the episode herself, Devin Gill.
All that talk about how love makes you stronger, but the second you see that elf girl in pain, you completely lost yourself.
Seems to me that love's got a tighter grip on you than those chains round your wrists. So I'll do you a favor and set you free. I hope you like my Finnegrin impersonation. While not coming from Callum himself, Finnegrin is absolutely hinting at Callum loving Rayla in this scene. Then, Finnegrin reveals his plan to use Rayla as bait for the Sea Leviathan, basically telling Callum outright that he's going to kill her. Callum becomes desperate, telling Finnegrin exactly what he wanted to know, the dark magic spell to kill Domina. Unfortunately, Finnegrin claims that the offer was already off the table, and he walks out. Callum is now left in the room alone, knowing that if he doesn't do something now, Rayla was going to die. So, in desperation, Callum does something he told himself he would never do again. Dark magic. He turns the chains binding him into snakes, and saves Rayla's life right on time, but in the process, Finnegrin casts Venus Frigoris on Callum, causing Rayla to call out Callum's name once again. But, in that moment, Callum manages to connect to the Ocean Arcanum, completely canceling Finnegrin's spell with his own spell. Rayla is overjoyed. The look on her face says it all. Unfortunately, Callum gets caught by Deadwood, and Rayla is about to break free from her bonds and attack, but Soren stops her. With his words, he manages to sway Deadwood's allegiance, and they manage to defeat Finnegrin once and for all. After things calm down, Rayla approaches Callum and sits next to him.
So, 2 primal sources. Now you're just getting greedy, Mr. Mage.
But Callum can hardly even acknowledge her, the guilt of his dark magic use etched upon his face. Rayla places a hand on his shoulder, asking if he's okay. Callum meets her eyes, and, knowing he couldn't tell her what he did, he lies, saying that he was indeed okay, which of course he wasn't. Rayla places a hand on his face, telling him she was glad, before pulling him in for a hug, sighing happily as she did so. Callum hesitates, the guilt on his face so prevalent, but regardless, he hugs her back, burying his face into the crook of her neck, letting her hold him after he nearly lost her forever. This episode is absolutely amazing in a dark, twisted way. Now, instead of Rayla keeping the secrets, it's Callum's turn, and he will have to live with this secret for many episodes. Also, I would like to point out that once again, we see an example of Rayla reciprocating an act from Callum, although in this case, it maybe wasn't so romantic. Callum was the first person to touch her face, and Rayla returned the gesture by gently touching his, as well as returning the hug that Callum gave her at the end of Season 4. And what's even crazier is that we still have 1 episode to go in this season. In the finale, we see that Callum has been healed from his wounds. Now, this could just be a continuity error, or showing the passage of time, but many fans have headcanoned that Rayla actually took Callum aside privately and cleaned his wounds for him. This is also backed up by the fact that Rayla canonically knows first aid. It's not canon that she did this for him, but it's a nice thought, and a thought that I personally subscribe to. As they prepare to head down on the water to find Erebos' prison, Callum paints ocean runes on all of their necks so they can breathe. Rayla reluctantly climbs into the water, and Callum tries his best to help her through the trauma. But unfortunately, trauma is much different from fear. It's very hard to overcome. I would have loved for the scene to have been a little different. I would have loved to see Rayla trust in Callum's magic and take that breath, especially with how he places a hand on her shoulder and tells her to look into his eyes. But alas, we once again see Callum's concern as Rayla climbs back onto the boat.
Rayla, are you okay?
I'll be fine. I couldn't do it.
I'm getting out.
No.
Eventually though, Rayla does actually come and help in the fight, proving that she trusted Callum's magic after all, overcoming her trauma enough to join the battle, and with the help of Callum's magic and Stella's portals, Rayla saves them all by cutting Claudia's tentacle leg off. After the battle, Callum, Rayla, and Ezran embrace. The final Raylan scene in this entire season has Callum placing his hand over Rayla's, sharing a soft look with her, hopeful about things to come, now that they had Erebos' pearl. So now that we've gone through 2 seasons of Raylan rekindling, we can see just how far we've come since Rayla came back. They're holding hands again, confiding in one another, displaying PDA, hugging, comforting, touching, and nearly being a thing again. But despite all of that, we have barely even scratched the surface of what Raylan will eventually become by the end of the series, because Season 6, in my opinion, is the best Raylan season in the entire show. So, let's get into it. Season 6 Raylan begins with Callum and Rayla having a talk about the Starscraper and Erebos on the battlements of Katalis. Rayla finds Callum pacing around and brings back some of that Arc 1 sarcasm to greet him.
I heard you were up here losing your mind.
Callum expresses his desire to destroy the Pearl, and says that if anyone would know how to destroy it, it would be the Celestial Elves, who were, conveniently, the guardians of the Starscraper, the very same place where Callum could get Quasar diamonds to bring Rayla's family back. Rayla is touched, but she refuses to let her love for her family bias her. Ezran decided that the Pearl was to remain in Katalis. She then calmly asked him why he was so worried.
Erebos is in the prison, but he's not powerless. I don't know how, but I'm afraid he's gonna use me.
While just a small conversation, it's nice to see how concerned they are for one another's plights and worries. Moving on, Callum gets possessed by Erebos in the middle of the night, sleepwalking to the Pearl. Once he snaps out of it, he immediately seeks out Rayla, bursting into her room and waking her up in the middle of the night.
Rayla? Rayla, please wake up!
What's that? Who knows? I'm taking you down.
Oh, no, it's me, Rayla, it's just me, it's Callum.
Don't sneak up on me like that. You're lucky I didn't use these incredibly dangerous weapons on you.
It would have been a comfy and cozy death.
Once Rayla recovers, she asks Callum what's up. No, literally, she says,
What's up, Callum?
which I always find hilarious. Callum tells her what happened, and Rayla initially brushes it off as Callum being exhausted and having a nightmare, following it up by saying that if she believed he was in any real danger, she would protect him. As she says this, she attempts to reach for his hands to hold them, but Callum cuts her off and recoils.
If I thought you were in any real danger, you know I would.
We're all in danger.
He tells her that this threat is real and that they had to do something. Rayla then successfully holds his hands, a gesture which, as you may have guessed, was initially done by Callum first back in the Great Bookery. Once she holds onto his hands, she tells him that she believed him. Callum gets an idea, stealing Rayla's blanket in the process.
Oh, I know. He took our blankie.
This is the first time we've seen them so close again, confiding in one another, touching one another, and just talking and attempting to solve problems together. It parallels how Season 5 started, but in that season, there was still a distance between them, and there wasn't really any touching either. This is a beautiful start to the Raylan season, and it only gets better as we see Rayla jump to Callum's defense once Barrius the Baker brings in the decoy Pearl, and offering to protect him again by volunteering herself to swap the fake Pearl for the real one, so that he doesn't have to go near Erebos again. While Callum does not take her up on her offer, and does it himself, which was a terrible idea, seeing Rayla being so protective of Callum is always amazing. That morning, Callum and Rayla depart on a Shadowpaw, and due to Callum's lack of sleep that night, he falls asleep on her back, and the look she gives him as he does this is just, damn, Rayla. Make it less obvious how badly you want him next time, alright? Their journey brings them all the way up to the frozen north, but before they get there, there is a tiny scene right at the end of episode 2 where they are camping somewhere in the kingdom of Durin. We know it's Durin because he marks out their location on the map. I made an entire theory video about this scene, which was proved to be almost correct, but I was off on the location. It actually pointed to Alarion, not Ocean Point. I was close though. Go check that video out if you're interested. While nothing happens between them in this scene, we do witness Callum just simply glancing at Rayla with happiness, perhaps reminding himself how lucky he is that she's still alive after the Finnegan episode. Anyways, moving on to episode 3, The Frozen Ship. This episode is probably one of Raylam's biggest episodes in the whole series. The episode begins with Callum having a nightmare about his use of dark magic on Finnegan's ship. A driving point behind the plot of this episode. He imagines how Rayla would react, and as he does so, Rayla wakes him up, unfortunately oblivious to his dreams. As they try to cross the ice, their Shadowpaw falls through and almost drowns. In the chaos, Callum's bedding falls into the frozen waters, never to be seen again, and after they work together to try and rescue the Shadowpaw, it slips and falls through. Desperate to save it, Rayla urges Callum to use magic, and he does so, saving its life, saving one of the only memories Rayla has of home. After sending the Shadowpaw back the way it came to protect it, they continue on foot until they reach black ice. Callum explains what it is to Rayla, who has surprisingly never encountered it before on her adventures, and Rayla underestimates just how slippery it is, causing Callum to have to rush in and catch her. And here, in this moment, we get a hint at what is to come later on, as they both become lost in the moment, staring into each other's eyes, subtly leaning in, without thinking, until Sneasels just completely ruins the moment. Damn you, Sneasels! Rayla then awkwardly separates.
Thanks. That was super smooth. The ice, I mean.
Yeah, sure, Rayla. We all totally believe you meant the ice. Callum then, as a gentleman, lets Rayla hold onto his arm, and the pair of them walk like a newly wedded couple across the ice. Eventually, they come across the frozen ship, and after a bit of back and forth banter that reminded me a lot of Arc 1 Raylan.
It's literally frozen in time.
It's literally frozen in ice. It's figuratively frozen in time. I'm going in. See if there's anything useful. Supplies and such.
I'm the one who lost all my stuff. I should go in.
No, there's no telling how unstable the ship is after so many years in the elements. I'm quick and agile. If anything shifts, I'll be able to handle it.
Mm-hmm. No, very agile. I mean, we all remember when...
And don't bring up the evil black ice incident.
Rayla explores the ship and finds a diary written by the captain, Esmeralda Scal. In it, she writes about her regrets about leaving the love of her life behind, and Rayla suddenly realizes that she can relate to Esmeralda's words, as she left Callum behind all those years ago. While she reads, Callum is outside in the cold, distracting himself by drawing Rayla again. But the cold eventually does get to him, and he tries to call her name, but doesn't get a reply. Instead, he can hear her crying inside the ship, and he rushes in, trying to be heroic, but fails miserably.
Rayla! Rayla, I'm here!
Rayla is actually emotional when she sees Callum, and he approaches her with a soft voice, but when he realizes that Rayla had just been reading the entire time, he kind of understandably gets upset.
You were reading?
Sorry,
Rayla?
Yeah, I mean, I thought maybe there was something we needed to know. But it doesn't matter. I told you not to come on the boat.
Callum scolds her for making him think that something was wrong, and Rayla defends herself, not wanting Callum to see her emotional. As usual. He decides to drop it, saying they should just stay in the ship for the night, to which Rayla agrees. It is here that Callum realized his bedding plunged into the water during the ice incident, so he tries to make himself a bed out of planks. After watching him struggle, Rayla suggests that they just share the blanket, that it wasn't really that big of a deal. But, well, as we've seen before with Rayla's initiations, much like the stargazing scene, Callum's confusion still lingers and comes back every now and then. He very awkwardly declines, but after a while of sleeping in the cold Arctic air, it starts to get to him. But not before Callum shares a story with Rayla about his birth father, Damien, an action that does not go unappreciated by the elf. Once Callum tries to sleep though, Rayla notices his shuddering breath and tells him to not be stupid, and pulls the blanket over top of him.
Don't be stupid. We're sharing the blanket.
Even when they're in bed together, Rayla is respectful of his boundaries and simply tells him,
Good night.
Night.
And it probably would have stayed that way had it not been for these two schemers. We all know what they did, putting Rayla into a position where they were closer than ever before. So close that Rayla could feel Callum's warm breath on her face.
Your breath is warm.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's nice.
There's a lot to unpack from this scene. First of all, Callum's awkwardness. You can tell his mind is racing. His eyes says everything. But Rayla is just so patient and respectful to him. So soft. So calming. The way she had been ever since she returned in Season 4. Ever since she realized he needed time to gather his thoughts about her. Never once did she break that streak of patience. Never once did she overstep boundaries to a cautionable degree. Rayla was waiting for him. She had always been waiting for him, and now, as she reaches for his hand, Callum's eyes begin to literally water. A million thoughts flowing through his brain per second, no doubt. Confusion mixed with yearning. He doesn't pull away, but he doesn't know what's appropriate. Does he try to kiss her now? What should he do? Well, Rayla answered that question for him by placing his hand on her cheek for him, holding his gaze and holding his hand, just as Esmeralda Skull yearned to do with Conrad.
Conrad, if you were here, I would hold your gaze, and I would hold your hand.
Once Rayla did that, any and all of Callum's inhibitions in that moment went flying out the window. His expression softens. Rayla closes her eyes, and Callum pulls her in. Notice that? Even now, when she's sure that he would kiss her, she lets him initiate. She doesn't lean in at all. Callum is pulling her face towards his own with his hand. Even now, Rayla is giving him a way out, letting him do what he needs, what he wishes. Sadly though, the topic of dark magic was on the tip of his tongue. He knew he had to tell her what he had done before he could commit to kissing her. Yet again, showing just how mature both of them had become. Though there was no kiss here, the discussion of dark magic and the greater good is also immensely important. This comes back again in Season 7, and we'll get to that soon. But for now, let me draw your attention to something.
Can't believe you used dark magic again.
Because it's wrong?
Because it's dangerous. Because it hurts you. But most of all, because it makes you vulnerable to the thing you're most afraid of.
Erebos, I know.
Notice how when Rayla gets upset with him for using dark magic, it isn't because of morality this time. It isn't because it's wrong, as Callum assumed she would say, but rather, Rayla is upset because dark magic hurts him. A huge difference from the younger Rayla, whose disapproval came more from the morality of dark magic rather than Callum's own safety. Well, until he began gasping in her arms. Callum decides to tell her exactly why he used dark magic, and we can see the conflict etched upon Rayla's face. I don't know who animated this scene, but whoever did it, you have my respect. The amount of emotion in their expressions here is insane. It's so good. Rayla tells Callum that if he ever has to choose between herself and the greater good, that he needed to do the right thing and sacrifice her. Moments later, after they escape the burning ship, Callum tells her that in return, she has to promise to kill him if Erebos possesses him again, to which she now agrees to, realizing the seriousness of his request. This episode was made for them. Quite literally, the frozen ship itself was a metaphor for Raylan, being frozen in time until a single act rekindled that hearth, where they nearly kissed, but for now, the ship still couldn't sail until Callum cleansed himself somehow of dark magic. Not only that, but the name of the ship was also Raylan, Ray of Illumination, and when the ship was burning, the only letters that could be read was Raylan. Moving on, in the next episode, they arrive at the Starscraper. We can see that they've moved on from the previous night, and are back to focusing at the challenge at hand, being friendly and working together to figure out the Starscraper platform. The next moment between them that's noteworthy is when Callum and Rayla both agree to act like they are the Chosen Two, as they attempt to seek the Elder's help in destroying the Pearl. During this, the Elder tells Callum and Rayla about how an immortal Great One, that being Erebos, cannot be killed. This devastates Callum, who falls to his knees in defeat, also after learning that the Nova Blade wasn't there. Rayla places a comforting hand on his arm before they are interrupted by Cosmo and Astrid, telling them about the prophecy of the Chosen Two. The Elder speaks the words, saying how the Chosen Two will restore the heavens, and in return, the heavens will adorn them. I'm quite certain that Callum instantly realized what those words meant, as the word adorn is a synonym to make one more beautiful or attractive, and in this case, that would come from wearing the corona of the heavens, the very item Callum needed to save Rayla's loved ones from the coins, as it contained the Quasar diamonds in it. And because of this, Callum wants to stay and attempt to fulfill the prophecy, but he doesn't want to tell Rayla exactly why, because of how well he knows her, and we will get to that soon. After Cosmo and Astrid show Callum and Rayla to their room, Rayla asks Callum if they were sneaking out now or in the morning, and here, Callum begins to convince Rayla to attempt the prophecy by asking her what she thought the prophecy meant by the heavens will adorn them. Rayla correctly tells him that they made it up that they were the Chosen Two, but Callum then, somewhat nervously and in a dorky stutter, claims that they were still an important two, a useful two. And as he says these words, Stella smirks at him, realizing that Callum was trying to imply that they were a couple. I genuinely don't know if anyone has ever caught this. Rayla wonders if he's actually considering this, the prophecy. And Callum says,
"Just think about it. The warrior and the mage shall pierce the heart of the beast and melt the threat forever. Maybe there's something to it. Maybe we can do this."
He then explains that there is a reason he thinks they can do this. The words of the prophecy mention piercing the heart of the beast and melting the threat forever. Callum wonders if the spell he used to counteract Finnegran's Ice Rain spell could melt ice in general. Rayla watches with a smile on her face as Callum attempts to perform his magic, but sadly, the spell doesn't work, and frustrated, Callum slams his sketchbook down on the table, scaring Stella, who runs to her mama. Rayla tells him that it was a good idea, but since it wasn't working, she was going to bed and that they would go back home in the morning. As Callum tries to figure the spell out, he hears Rayla singing a lullaby to Stella to calm her down, and as she sings, Callum looks over at her with a look of genuine love. Also, does anyone else think that the lyrics of her lullaby could be expressing her feelings for Callum too?
The moon is more than just her light. I am near, my love is here.
After 2 years of being apart, hearing those words from her may have actually been the cause of his little smile after being frustrated just moments ago. After a little while, Callum returns with a massive block of ice, Don't ask where he got it. Waking Rayla in the process, Callum explains he figured out the spell and asks for one of her blades.
Don't worry, I know how to handle it.
Impressive. You kept all your fingers.
Man, I wish we had gotten more of that sarcastic Rayla in this arc. But the spell actually works this time, even if it soaks both of their shoes in the process. Callum tells Rayla that she needed to carve the rune into the beast's heart, that way Callum could use the spell to melt the threat forever. He then gently grabs hold of her shoulders and brings her in close.
This is why it has to be us, a warrior and a mage. We're gonna fulfill the prophecy. As soon as I find a pair of dry socks.
Look how far they've come since Season 4. As much as I don't like slow burns in franchises, I actually really enjoyed it here. It's yet another example of how realistic and natural Rayla is. Like, we all knew they were going to get back together again. It was inevitable. But still, the writers decided to give their relationship meaning. They decided to still teach us a lesson with their story, both through exposition from the characters like Amaya, Esmeralda, and of course, Callum and Rayla themselves, and through actions, like Rayla showing Callum the coins, Callum telling Rayla about dark magic. It's just so good. And so, with their new plan, they head out into the cold in search of the behemoth that was causing the storms on each moonless night. Once they find it, they work together to try and bring it down, and they are nearly successful until Rayla actually recognizes the beast, known as Esmeralda, a loyal companion to Luna Tenebris, a former dragon monarch. Callum is forced to save her life by catching her with a spell, and once they recover, she tries convincing Callum about Esmeralda, but he is unsure, saying that the beast would kill them. Rayla told him that she knew it seemed crazy, but that she knew she was right. She then begged him to trust her. And in that moment, all of the trust they had been building up over their entire relationship surges into Callum's mind. You can literally see just how much he trusts her. No words needed to be exchanged. He gives a soft nod, and Rayla is so appreciative that she puts a hand on his shoulder and gives him a warm smile despite the freezing temperatures. Callum then of course returns the gesture, and he watches as she sings the exact same lullaby that she sang to Stella, a lullaby about the moon's love, something Esmeralda missed very, very much. Once Rayla, with the help of Stella and the Moon Opal, fulfilled the prophecy, Callum places a hand on her shoulder.
You did it, Rayla. I understand now. Your kindness pierced her heart and melted the thread.
Once they arrive back, they are adorned with the heavens as Cosmo presents the corona to them.
What is this?
It's the corona of the heavens.
Then those are...
Quasar diamonds. The only thing that can bring back your family.
Callum gently holds her hand and gets her to reach for it, giving her a soft smile.
You knew. You knew this was the reward. Why didn't you tell me?
'Cause I know you, Rayla. If I told you, you would have refused to go because you never do anything for yourself. So, I wanted to do something for yourself, for you, or something like that.
And Callum is completely right. After realizing that Callum had done all of this, risking their lives and fulfilling the prophecy just for her, she runs at him and tackles him in a hug, squeezing him tight and letting out a soft little whimper. And Callum awkwardly returns the hug. Things all seem great, but then, as they witness the moonless night, Cosmo becomes enlightened and tells Callum that he saw darkness within him, and this brings all of Callum's negative feelings about himself back, making him unable to sleep at all, as Rayla realizes when she wakes up the next day.
Hey, did you sleep at all?
About an hour, then I woke up feeling anxious.
Rayla attempts to cheer Callum up, but unfortunately she's never really been the greatest at this. Callum tells her his heart is full of darkness, and Rayla tries to convince him that he's still a good person, maybe the goodest. He vents about how they failed to destroy the pearl, how they took it all the way across the world for nothing, as it was revealed that the Celestial Elves did not possess the Nova Blade, or a way to destroy it. Rayla then manages to actually cheer him up, reminding him how even if they didn't destroy the pearl, they did take it all the way across the world.
You're right about one thing. We did take it all the way across the world.
So, they decide to ask the Celestial Elves to simply watch over the pearl to make sure nothing happened to it. But Cosmo then reveals the truth, that the pearl they brought to the Starscraper was the wrong one. They had brought the decoy, while the actual pearl was still in Catalis. This subsequently breaks Callum's spirit completely. Rayla tells him that this wasn't his fault, that he must have somehow been controlled by Erebos.
You think that makes me feel better? That makes me feel worse.
It is worthy to note right now that we are in an alternate timeline, which is why the screen is grayscaled. What occurs here doesn't actually happen, but as they return to the regular timeline, Cosmo decides to keep the truth hidden after Astrid told him that the truth broke Callum's spirit. Now, with the thought that they had completed their quest, Cosmo suggests the Star Truth ritual to Callum to cleanse him of dark magic, and unlike the alternate reality where he declines the offer, in this reality, he receives a gentle, reassuring smile from Rayla, and it convinces him to go through with it. To do so, Cosmo and Astrid bring Callum and Rayla to the Zenith, and he gets bit by a Starweaver spider. As this happens, he goes limp for a moment and Rayla catches him, holding him up. As Cosmo blindfolds him, he tells Callum that he doesn't need to look outward, he has to look inward, to find the one deep truth so bright it fills the darkness. And so, Callum casts the Magewing spell and takes off blindly into the sky, with a concerned look from Rayla down below. As he climbs, he sees nothing and eventually begins to fall back to Earth. But then, as he falls, he sees a spark of light. An arm reaches out. A smile grows on Callum's face as he spreads his wings and traces that one deep truth, which turns out to be Rayla herself. There she was, in the stars, reaching out for him, filling the darkness in his soul with her own light, a motif that has been part of this arc since she arrived in Season 4. When we first saw her, she was surrounded by the bright light of the moon, and throughout this arc, Rayla's light has been the thing that has kept Callum going against Erebos' darkness. This scene, to me, is telling us that Callum's deep truth was that he loved Rayla. He always had. Despite the emotional walls he put up, all the awkward hugs, the anger, the confusion, the conflicts and their trials, through it all, the one deep truth was that he loved her. He always had. And this ritual made him realize that for absolute certainty. That may not be what the scene actually means, but to me, I don't really see a better explanation for why Rayla would be in the stars. It's a beautiful scene, and what's even more beautiful is that as Callum returns, cleansed of dark magic, he literally has a part of Rayla within him, keeping him cleansed and protected from Erebos' possession of him. Sort of like how Lily Potter gave Harry Potter protection from Voldemort. Callum is now immune to Erebos' control, unless he does dark magic again, as Cosmo warns. As Callum returns, Rayla runs to him and embraces him.
Callum, you did it!
Yeah, I found my one truth.
This hug right here is precisely why I think the Star Truth ritual was about Callum realizing his love for her. Compare this hug with the hug from just the previous episode. It's much more tender, much more soft and meaningful. He returns it instantly, no hesitancy or awkwardness. It's just love from both of them. As they return to their room, Rayla falls asleep, but Callum stays awake, thinking. Most likely thinking about what he just experienced and thinking about Rayla. Just then, she notices he isn't sleeping. Callum asks her,
You ever think about moments in your life and wonder how things might be different if you had just changed one thing?
Rayla says of course, and asks if there's a specific moment he's thinking about. Callum tells her he's thinking about the moment she came back, and Rayla playfully apologizes for sneaking up on him. Callum continues, he admitted that when he saw her standing there, he became flooded with so many emotions, happiness and anger being the two prominent emotions as mentioned to Ezra in Season 4. Rayla apologizes, but Callum insists that she doesn't have to be sorry. It's clear that at this point, he really doesn't need an apology from her, despite how much he may be entitled to one after what she did to him. But, as I hope this video has proved, a lot has changed since then, and he recognizes this. Then, he takes a step towards her.
What if we try that moment again?
Okay.
Rayla agrees, and the two of them are just so comfortable and playful in this scene, as Callum explains what he wants her to do.
You want me to...
Leave for a few seconds, and we will pretend it's 2 years, then come back in, and Say what you said when I first saw you. Do you remember what you said?
Once Rayla comes in, she says the exact same thing she said in Season 4 after coming back.
Hey.
I love you, Rayla.
I love you too, Callum.
After 2 long years, Raylan is finally back together and officially canon. After such a long journey from the start of Season 4 to now, they made it happen yet again. The slow burn was worth it. And now, we get to once again discuss the timeline of their relationship while they are official. It's hilarious to me that the majority of this video is discussing moments between them that lead up to moments when they become a thing, rather than them actually being a thing. But that's about to change. We still have 12 more episodes of Raylan goodness to cover. So, let's continue on. After being apart for so long, I think it's an understatement to say that these two lovebirds were deprived of one another, because in the very first scene of Season 6, Episode 7, they are making out on the zenith of the skyscraper. The kiss is just beautiful. The way he holds her chin, the soft looks, tucking her hair behind her ear, and then the cuddles that come after. Now that they had completed their mission, they are making plans to head to the Moon Nexus to free Rayla's family. Like she said, the mission came first, but now that it was over, now is the time to bring them back with the 3 Quasar Diamonds in the Corona. Before they go, they flirt with one another.
One more?
One more what?
You know.
I know.
And I mean, don't get mad at me, but this is an innuendo, right? Anyways, please don't kill me.
There'll be more kisses later.
Rayla then spreads her silk wings, given to her by the Celestial Elves, so she can make the long flight with Callum. Rayla is worried, but Callum reassures her by spreading his own wings and telling Rayla to trust him.
Trust the wings. Trust me.
I trust you.
They plan to jump together, but Rayla hesitates for a moment, watching her boyfriend fly around and look back down at her with a confident smile. Rayla joins him, and after a bit of a struggle, they take off. There is much debate on just how much time passed from when they left the skyscraper to when they arrived at the Moon Nexus, but if TDP is consistent with their moon phases, they left on the morning after a moonless night, or a new moon, and arrived on a waning gibbous, which is just over 2 entire weeks later. Given how long it took them to travel from Catalyst to the Storm Spire in the first 3 seasons, this adds up that it would take them 2 weeks to fly to the Moon Nexus, accounting for stops along the way to sleep and rest. We have no idea what they did during this time, since the show cuts right to them arriving in Episode 8, but if their behavior from the skyscraper is consistent, I suspect they had quite a lot of moments that were left to the imagination of the viewer. When they finally do arrive, though, Lujane immediately recognizes that they are a thing again.
So, this is a thing again? You two?
Well, yeah.
Yes, it is. It always was. It was always her.
But then, she realizes that one of the Quasar Diamonds is fake, which means they can only save 2 people, and Rayla has to save 3. Unbeknownst to them, Erebos actually had the 3rd, hidden within Viren's staff for probably centuries. This causes Rayla to have to make a difficult choice. She can only save 2 out of the 3 elves trapped in the coins. Callum offers his comfort.
3 souls, but only 2 Quasar Diamonds. It's just not fair. How will you be able to choose between Runan and your parents?
They're all my parents, Callum.
Despite the revelation, they still go through with the plan. Rayla would go into the Moon Nexus portal again and find the other half of the souls and bring them back. Again, something else that people might not realize is that nearly 3 entire weeks actually pass from the day they arrive at the Moon Nexus to the day where Rayla goes through the portal, because the portal can only activate on the full moon, and it was a waning gibbous when they arrived. Again, this could be discontinuity with Dragon Prince's moon phases, which is common in animation, but if it's to be used as a time frame, they need to spend at least 21 days before the next full moon happens. This also means that by the time Rayla goes into the portal, it's been over a month since they left the skyscraper. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, because the show's editing makes it seem like everything happens continuously, But if the moon phases are to be believed, a lot of time passes. Plenty of time for more Rayla moments to happen off screen that we, the audience, can only imagine about. But finally, after preparing everything they need, they get ready to execute their plan. But before she goes in, Callum reaches for her hand.
What's this?
It's a bracelet of moon phoenix feathers. It'll let you come back to me, to us. You know, to the not dead side. Please don't die.
This kiss is so good. Not really because it's meaningful or anything, even though it of course still is, but like, look at that hand placement from Callum. And once again, Rayla returned the kiss after Callum initiated the first one at the Starscraper. It's been nothing but reciprocation from her the entire time, and this kiss is just yet another example of that. While Rayla was in the portal, Callum was nervously waiting on the other side, praying she would come back. What makes this entire situation insane for me is the fact that they've been here before, doing this exact same thing in Through the Moon, and we all know how that ended. You have to wonder if Callum or Rayla are having some kind of PTSD to the events that happened all those years ago, especially Callum, with how dependent he seems on being with her now. But once Rayla emerges with Renan's flower, Callum quite literally jumps off a cliff to reach her, wrapping his winged arms around her in a hug as she reveals that she has Renan. And so, with all the materials gathered for the spell, Callum does his part and sets Renan free. Rayla cries in happiness and appreciation as he does so, and can we just talk about how Callum is literally reviving the person who murdered his stepfather? Remember how upset he was about that in Through the Moon? It's so amazing how Callum has seemingly moved on from those negative feelings towards Renan, and this comes up again in Season 7 when Ezran learns of Renan's existence again. But for now, the spell worked, and Rayla instantly runs to comfort Renan. While this was expected to be a rather awkward meeting between these two characters, Callum gets distracted when he sees smoke off in the distance, and with a shock, he realizes it's Catalyst, where he presumably hasn't been in nearly 2 months now, ever since leaving for the Starscraper. This season spans a lot of time, and it goes by very unnoticed, but we've finally reached the end of Season 6, and now we move on to the 7th and currently final season of the show, a season where Raylan dominates more than any other season. And so, let's tackle this final leg of our journey through this massive timeline. Season 7 begins with Rayla telling Callum that he should go check on the ruins of Catalyst, while she waits with Renan for him to recover at the Moon Nexus. The plan originally was for them to go back to the Silver Grove with Renan together to let him be with Athari again, and Callum is worried that she would go back to the Silver Grove without him while he was in Catalyst, and he voices these concerns. It's interesting, as he says, "I don't want to be separated again." While it isn't 100% obvious, he's likely referring to the events of Through the Moon when she left him the first time, but they've both grown since then, and Rayla assures him that she wasn't going anywhere without him.
Oh, Callum, you're stuck with me now. Stuck, I say. Like two adorabers, cuddling on a cold day. You go ahead. I won't leave without you. As soon as Renan is better, we'll come and find you in Catalyst. I promise.
Starting this season off like this is just amazing, and the look Rayla gives as Callum flies away is just... she looks so proud of him. And Rayla does make through with her promise, even defending her love for Callum right in front of Renan.
I made a promise to the elf I love that I would return to him, and I will not keep him waiting 1 minute longer.
We need to stop on our way and find Callum in Catalyst.
Catalyst? Is that necessary?
Yes, I made a promise to the human I love.
And so, Rayla and Renan arrive at Catalyst, and when Rayla finds him, she wakes him up.
Hey. Hey, wake up, sleepyhead. We're here.
Rayla? I'm glad you're here.
And damn, that kiss. Callum's voice is incredibly soft, and he is just so glad to see her, so glad that she kept her promise this time. But moments later, Ezran notices Renan and completely snaps. The man who killed his father. Unlike Callum, Ezran has not moved on from the horrific acts that Renan committed against his family. He orders Renan to be arrested, and when they reach the Banther Lodge, Callum and Rayla discuss the matter on the stone bridge, a bridge that will come back multiple times for them this season. He tries convincing Rayla to remain calm and patient, correctly stating how Ezran wasn't himself right now, after losing Katalis and seeing Renan. But Rayla's feelings towards Renan are very strong. The man is basically a father to her, and she knows how badly he wants to see Athari again. She argues back, stating how Renan wasn't the cause of Katalis' destruction, and Callum replies saying,
No, but he did kill its king.
So you agree with him? You're on Ezran's side now.
No, that's not what I'm saying. It's just... it's complicated.
Tells her to give Ezran time to process everything. Not wanting to escalate the argument further, Rayla slowly walks away, and Callum follows. They both attend a council meeting to decide what to do with Renan. Rayla, of course, defends him to Ezran, but Ezran's emotions are clouded, cold, and vengeful. Rayla storms off, and Callum, being caught in the middle, attempts to follow her again, but Ezran demands that he remains in the council meeting, referring to him as High Mage, to assert his authority over his older brother, which, if I recall correctly, is the only time he has ever done so using his kingly status. Once the meeting is adjourned, Callum finds Rayla crying on the bridge, and he immediately apologizes, saying he should have left the meeting right away. Rayla doesn't blame him, though. She understands that Callum is caught in the middle of this situation. So, she decides that she has to stop this herself and free Renan, even if it means betraying Ezran in the process. Callum begins to panic and tries one more time to convince her, but Rayla tells Callum that her family has been broken for too long, which is true. So, Callum decides that he would help her, but Rayla refuses his help.
If we have to, we can...
No! This is not a we. I could never ask you to betray your brother.
You don't have to ask. I would do anything for you.
Then I'm going to ask you to do one thing. Forgive me.
Callum then accepts her plan, to which Rayla, grateful, places a hand on his cheek. One of my favorite moments of this episode is right here. This kiss is just absolutely amazing. While the situation and the debates they were having are tense, they worked through it and came to an agreement.
Oh, that was salty.
The tears.
Yeah.
And gods, even when things are tense, they're still so compatible with one another, and that's what makes them such a realistic couple. Many other shows would have the couple automatically be on the same page on the conflict as grand as this. I mean, it's not every day in the real world that a teen couple has to deal with the morality of imprisoning or freeing your father's killer. And I think this is something many people forget when they judge Raylan. This episode is subject to much more debate about Callum's character for the choices he is about to make. But I think that is unfair, because this is a situation that barely anyone their age would have to deal with in today's world. Callum and Rayla have their own opinions and their own mindsets. They aren't perfect, but at the same time, that's why they're so damn good. We learn through them as they learn about each other. Callum asks Rayla when he would see her again, but she doesn't know. How could she know? As Callum walks away, a leaf lands in the water, sending ripples across the surface, symbolism for the decisions they both just made. Now, this episode is very complex, as I just mentioned, and because of that, I think we need to pull ourselves away from Callum and Rayla's moments in particular and focus on Callum and Ezran for a moment, because, well, Callum does betray his literal brother for a girl he's only known for 2 years. It is the subject of debate and ridicule, but, to me, it makes perfect sense, and this scene right here is why. Callum and Ezran, from the very start of the show, have preached the need to break the cycle of revenge, but now, Ezran is letting his emotions cloud his rationale. He's falling into that cycle again, and Callum calls him out on this. With his words, Callum tries to convince Ezran to continue preaching their need to end the cycle, bringing up Zadia, which was a very interesting point, because if you don't know, Renan and all the other assassins, including Rayla, were sent to kill Harrow and Ezran by Zadia, and Ezran is fully aware of this from the short story titled Deep Below. But yet, his relationship with Zadia, and by extension, Zim, is very warm, despite Zubeia's direct involvement in Harrow's assassination. But, despite all of Callum's words, Ezran's feelings still remain stronger than his rationale, and because of this, Callum makes the decision to go with Rayla and Renan, not just because Rayla is his girlfriend and he doesn't want to be separated again, but because he can't support Ezran's decision. He can't be Ezran's high mage, but he will always be his brother. The takes I've seen are that Callum only went with Rayla because he was a pushover. There might be some abandonment issues there, but in my opinion, it is still mostly Callum doing what he thinks is right, as he says to Ezran on the bridge.
What are you doing, Callum?
The right thing, I hope. I'm leaving with you.
Remember these words?
I won't hit Ez. Callum, what are you doing?
The right thing, I hope.
It's the same wording because it's the same situation. Callum doing what he thinks is right, betraying someone he's known his whole life. Not falling victim to the vicious cycle. Diplomacy with his brother failed, so he took action. To me, it makes perfect sense. As he freezes all the guards, he tells Rayla that he's leaving with her and that they would do this together, once again bringing back Amaya's theme from the Great Bookery, being stronger together. It's amazing how often the show can tie into its own past. But before they can escape, Anya shoots Renan in the shoulder, and Callum stands guard in front of him, forcing Ezran into an ultimatum. Thankfully, Ezran doesn't let Anya kill his own brother, and after telling Ezran that he couldn't be his high mage anymore, he runs onto the boat with Renan and Rayla and casts a spell, getting them out of there. Phew, what an insane episode, right? Thankfully, the next few episodes will be less analyzing and more timelining. The next time we see Callum and Rayla is actually when they reach the Silver Grove. All three of them perform the dance to get in, and Renan is so happy to be back. Rayla, however, hasn't yet told him that she was ghosted. So, with the help of Callum, they convince Renan to go ahead to meet Athari without them. While he was gone, Callum wraps an arm around Rayla.
You haven't told him yet that you were banished.
I couldn't. I just couldn't.
This episode for Raylan actually showcases a much different version of Rayla than what we are used to. A more mature and emotionally dependent Rayla. Notice how instead of running from her problems and hiding her emotions like she did the first time she was ghosted, she fully embraced Amaya's lesson about trust and sharing the burden with the one you love, and goes to Callum multiple times this episode for emotional support when she deems it necessary. And he is always there to help her. We just saw one such moment where Rayla leans into his touch and his hold, literally sharing the weight of the situation with them, and their very next moment has Rayla accepting that she may never get to come back. Callum once again adorns the elf Callum costume, but Rayla tells Callum that they couldn't stay. Callum tells her that they couldn't just leave Renan and Athari behind, that they were Rayla's family. Rayla agrees, but tells Callum that she couldn't burden them with her own mistakes.
I have to live with what I've done, not them. Besides, my home now, it's wherever you are.
It's just a nice moment, showing how far they've come, how far Rayla in particular has come, to realizing her home was with him, wherever he was, knowing that they could keep each other safe now, instead of simply having her protect him. Callum has proved himself a competent mage and a fighter many times over since she came back. It's just amazing. I wonder how many times I've said amazing in this video. But of course, Renan and Athari come to Rayla personally after Athari told Renan what happened, and we get this little goofy moment.
Rayla! How could you keep this from me?
I thought it was really obvious. I thought you already knew about us.
No! That you've been made a ghost!
Once inside the Silver Grove, they find Keeper Lorenus and invoke the Ritual of the New Moon, a ritual that would, if Rayla succeeded, unghost her. Callum isn't allowed in, so he waits outside, and to his horror, Rayla came running out with tears in her eyes, and Callum instantly embraced her. Rayla told him what happened, that Ram, one of the assassins murdered in Catalyst, was Keeper Lorenus' son, and therefore refused to unghost her. Once again, we see her coming to Callum, showing her vulnerability, letting him share the burden, instead of running off or hiding her emotions like she would in the past.
The Keeper's son is dead, and it's my fault. He'll never forgive me.
This isn't right. What you did was hard, but it was the right thing. You know that. I know you do.
I'll have to beg him. I'll grovel. I'll say anything he wants to hear.
They are soon interrupted by Athari, who convince Rayla to try again, to speak to Lorenus with a different point of view. And this time, when she exits the hollow tree, she is followed by Lorenus and has a smile on her face. Callum breathes a sigh of relief and smiles back, knowing she succeeded. She runs to Rutharia and hugs her family, and Callum awkwardly stands to the side before Rayla pulls him into the family hug, symbolizing that he was part of her family now too. And now we move on to one of my favorite episodes in the entire show, Season 7, Episode 5, Sticky Fingers. Did they really have to title it that? This episode is quite literally just slice of life Raylan. It starts off with a 2-week time skip where Callum is learning about Moonshadow culture, getting to know Athari and Renan better, and most of all, spending a lot of time with Rayla. They are eating meals together, holding hands, and Callum even volunteers to help Athari out with the Pride Cubs, a group of Moonshadow children that wish upon Callum's downfall. Well, not really, but you know.
I think if an elf and a human had 10 babies, they would all turn out 10 different ways. Some would have horns, some would have 5 fingers.
How was your day?
Well, I think it went Rayla! Callum wants to have 10 babies with you! 10!
No. That's not, that isn't, that's, I didn't mean it like that.
Like, how on earth did he get away with this joke? Like, it's amazing. Why? That night, as they're eating, Rayla finally feeds Callum Moonberry Surprise, the dessert that Rayla first brought up to him 2 years prior when they first visited the Silver Grove. The look on her face when he takes a bite is priceless. She's like, what the fuck is this dummy doing? But then she's like, actually, I don't care what he's doing, because he's my dummy. My script is interesting. But where this episode really shines is this scene, where Callum lets out a belch, but they just love each other too much to even care, as Rayla calls him gross again, the same way she did in Season 4.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Moonberry Surprise is even more surprising the second time around.
Oh, you're gross.
Callum then tells Rayla,
you know what? I think I could do this. All of it. Just babysit Moonshadow kids, even the ones who scare me a little bit, and eat forest food, and get to know Athari and Renan better. Be with you. Yep, I could do this. Pretty nice life.
And as they lie together, one can only imagine just how many nights they spent like that during the 2-week time skip. Surely they shared a bedroom, right? But all of this bliss is suddenly whisked away when Astrid, somehow, finds him in the Silver Grove. How she got past the defenses is beyond me, but she comes bearing the news that Erebos is free. When they ask how, Astrid reveals that Callum and Rayla had in fact brought the fake pearl to the Starscraper instead of the real one, the exact thing that sent Callum into that spiral in Season 6. History then repeats itself, as Callum immediately takes blame. Rayla tries to comfort him, saying the exact same thing she said to him in the alternate timeline.
Callum, this isn't on you. The only explanation is you are somehow controlled by Erebos.
You think that makes me feel better? That makes me feel worse.
Except this time, it isn't an alternate timeline. This is the real timeline, and Astrid's revelation has real effects on both Callum and Rayla. Callum runs off and Rayla follows, trying to convince him that they would figure it out, but Callum was beyond reason at this point, especially since they thought they were done. He thought the threat of Erebos was finally gone, but no, it turns out that because of him, and him alone, Erebos was free and back into the world. As he looks at his reflection, Dark Callum looks back, causing him to recoil and tell Rayla that he needed to be alone for a bit. He spreads his wings and takes off, with Rayla desperately calling out his name, but to no avail. While he was gone, Rayla knew that if and when he came back, she had to comfort him as best as she could. So, when he eventually did come back, Rayla ran to him and threw her arms around him in a hug, asking if he was okay. To her relief, Callum told her that he was more than okay, that he had a plan. Hand in hand, they walk towards Astrid, who begins telling them everything Cosmo saw in his vision of the future. And they devise a plan that has them split up. Callum and Renan were to go to Archmage Akiyu to create a new prison for Erebos, while Rayla was to go to the Beacon of Domina Profundus to request the assistance of the Archdragon herself. Unbeknownst to Rayla, however, Claudia got to Akiyu first and killed her, ensuring that they could not create a new prison with primal magic. So, Callum resorts to using dark magic, telling Renan, whom he had grown quite close to, that he needed his help, and that Rayla was not to know of his plan. To use dark magic and sacrifice himself to imprison Erebos in the very same coin that had previously held Renan. The next time Callum and Rayla reconvene is at the Sunforge, and as they land, Rayla runs to him and kisses him.
You made it!
I'm here.
Notice the hand placement here too. I've read a headcanon that said that Callum held her like this because he believed it would be the last time he would ever hold her again, because he planned to sacrifice himself. A sad but beautiful thought, one that gives much more meaning to this kiss. But Rayla is still unaware of his plan. She thanks Renan for protecting him, and Renan tells Rayla that Callum has a good heart. I might one day make an entire video just dedicated to Renan's character development, because it is very interesting to me how much his opinion on Callum changes throughout the season. Anyway, as the battle against Erebos commences, Callum confronts Erebos and reveals his plan, and to the shock of Rayla, Callum tells Erebos that a Moonshadow assassin promised to kill him once the dark magic spell was complete. Rayla's thoughts went back to the cave in Umber Tor and to that night in the frozen sea, where Callum had asked her to kill him if Erebos possessed him again. She thought that Callum was referring to her, that she would have to kill him, her beloved, her soulmate. Erebos calls Callum out on his claim.
The moment the spell is complete, a Moonshadow assassin promised to kill me.
What? No.
How very selfless. But I'm afraid you've misjudged your would-be slayer. Your beloved is an assassin who cannot kill.
But then, Callum reveals that he wasn't referring to Rayla at all, but Renan, who was positioned behind Callum with his bow raised, ready to shoot. The plan they had come up with in Nikiyu's cave. Rayla becomes horrified, calling out his name, begging him to find another way, telling him he couldn't do this. But Callum tells her that he has to, that if he doesn't, everyone will die. But right then, Claudia subsequently removes Renan from the equation, leaving Callum alone, the plan failing. And in that moment, Rayla knew what she had to do. She had to be the one to kill Callum. She had to sacrifice her entire life, her love, her heart, for Zadia. With tears in her eyes, she meets Callum's gaze as she pulls back the bow, and Callum only has time to meet her eyes again for a second before he begins his spell. As Erebos continues to monologue, he begins to get captured within the coin, and Callum's entire body becomes strained from the effort of imprisoning such a massive figure. But in that moment, the prophecy becomes fulfilled. That one with black eyes would save them all and choose their own end. Avazandum. He tackles Erebos, having been snapped out of his trance by the arrival of Ezran and Zim, and seeing his own son alive, swapped his allegiance. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, the tackle breaks Callum's spell, causing a white streak to form in his hair from the strain, and he faints. Rayla immediately drops the bow and runs to catch him, wrapping her arms around him in a hug, holding him dearly, not even knowing if he was alive or dead. But he does wake up, and with the help of Ezran and Zim, they make it off the tower and under protective care of Domina Profundus, as Abazandum and Zubeia kill Erebos, sending him back to the heavens, delaying his eventual return for 7 more years. When the Star Touch Elf is killed, their physical form explodes in a miniature supernova, and as the prophecy stated, Abazandum, with black eyes, chose his own end and saved them all by delivering the fatal bite to the Star Touch Elf. Callum and Rayla hold onto each other tightly as the explosion destroys everything around them, including Domina Profundus and Zubeia. But, due to Domina's wings, everyone below her survived the blast. Callum and Rayla attended the memorial ceremony for the archdragons who sacrificed their lives, as well as attending a council meeting to discuss the creation of a new city called Everkind. Many months pass, and the city is revealed to the public, with Callum and Rayla standing hand in hand at the reveal. One night at the Banter Lodge, Callum gently wakes Rayla up in her sleep while she's still wearing her pajamas, cuddled up by the fire, perhaps missing Callum's warmth. He asks if she trusts him, holding out his scarf. And of course she does. After all, trust has been their theme since the very beginning. The look she gives him is just absolutely amazing, as she says,
I do.
Callum then blindfolds her and brings her to the bridge, where he reveals a starlit serenade he created for her.
With everything that's happened, I wanted to do something for you. Just for fun. So we spent all day working on this.
Rayla is absolutely amazed and in love with what he did, and she calls him ridiculous in a very lighthearted and positive way. As Callum playfully wonders if she meant it in a good way, Rayla interrupts him by placing her hand on his cheek.
You know what I love about you? Everything.
Everything. She loves everything about him, even his use of dark magic. It's such a great moment, showing how far they've come. Rayla saying she loves everything about him, even after he did dark magic again, is just so meaningful. And I think that's a big reason as to why this moment is so beloved. She loves him. All of him. And in that moment, to finalize the series, they kiss as the camera pans away and fades to the sky. Wow. Finally, we've completed their timeline. At least, their timeline at the time of making this video. We still don't know about a third arc at the time of me making this, but if we do get one, this video is going to be even longer in the future. Callum and Rayla had an amazing journey, filled with ups and downs, triumphs, disasters, emotions, companionship, trust, understanding, and love. They are my favorite couple in any series ever made. They are so realistic, going through the troubles that many real-life couples also encounter. This script took me over a month and a half to write from start to finish, with over 30,000 words. Like, why can't my university essays be about Rayla? I'd ace them all. Anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this incredibly long video. I hope that this sheds some light on why Rayla is one of the most realistic couples in fiction, and why they are so beloved despite all of the issues they've had. And besides, I just love them too much to not make a timeline video about them. You all really enjoyed my Hickstead one after all. But that's about it. Let me know down below if I missed anything, or what your thoughts on Rayla are. Thanks for watching, check out my other Rayla videos, subscribe, and goodbye.